IGF is the one moment in my annual calendar.
So the importance of IGF, it's actually about the quality of conversations.
I think it's such a fascinating mixture of people, businesses, the public sector.
You need places like the India Global Forum for the rest of the world to be interacting with.
We are all united in our desire for the same things. We want our businesses to grow, our careers to flourish, and our communities to thrive. We want to meet people who energize us, share exciting ideas, and discover new opportunities.
From India to the UK to the UAE and beyond, IGF is committed to bringing the contemporary India story.
Under the leadership of Manoj Ladwell, the Forum is doing a great job of bringing together global climate leaders.
That we see the Indian community for the success story you are in 21st century Britain.
फ्यूचर बहुत ब्राइट है, हम बहुत तेजी से और एक बड़े स्केल के साथ आगे बढ़ने जा रहे हैं.
Amongst ongoing global turbulence, IGF remains at the centre of limitless innovation, limitless possibilities and limitless collaboration, harnessing talent, technology and enterprise across sectors and geographies for maximum impact. India Global Forum is the gateway for global stakeholders to invest in and benefit from India's global trajectory. Hear from industry titans, build strategic partnerships, invest in the future. Only at India Global Forum. Join the conversation at www.indiaglobalforum.com. It's Monday, the 24th of June, 2024. Welcome to IGF London, Pathways to a Limitless Future. Please welcome to the stage our hosts for the forum live at the QE2 Centre in London, Nisha Pillay and Ben Thompson.
Good afternoon and welcome to you all. This is the opening event of the IGF Forum 2024. My name is Ben Thompson.
And my name is Nisha Pillay, and it is a great pleasure to be with you all here today. We have a wonderful lineup of events all week for you, bringing together business people and people from the arts, thought leaders. It's all about bringing India to the world and the world to India. Now, for those of you who are not in the know, this is actually the 6th edition of IGF's special forum, so it's wonderful to see you all here.
It is also, of course, the first international major India-focused event since those elections in India, of course, in which Prime Minister Narendra Modi won a historic third term. Next week, you can't fail to have noticed, there is also, of course, the small issue of the UK general election. And so we will discuss the politics, the economics of those developments, but we'll also talk about some of the fun stuff too, the culture and the arts, but also the business and social challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
Our big theme for IGF 2024 this year is Pathways to a Limitless Future. And here's what you can expect. Tomorrow we have a deep dive into business and climate. We call it our Climb event. That'll be followed by a focus on how to promote women in leadership called Women In. And we also offer you a Culture and Creativity Summit. How does that sound, ladies and gentlemen?
On Thursday too, we will take a moment to celebrate our now regular annual UK India Awards. We will be in the beautiful surroundings of the Fairmont in Windsor. We will then bring all of the week together on Friday with the Founders and Funders Forum. So first of all, a huge thank you to our sponsors, without whom this would not be possible. Welcome if you are with us for the first time. I look out, I see many familiar faces, so welcome back to you too. And if you're joining us right around the world online right now, a very warm welcome to here in central London.
Very shortly, we're also going to be welcoming two very special guests from India, Sanjeev Sanyal, member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, and Dr. Vijay Chauthewale, who's in charge at the Foreign Affairs Department of the BJP. But first, to start our official proceedings, we have a special address recorded for the forum at the weekend by Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, whose ministerial portfolio has recently been expanded from railways to include now information and broadcasting, I&B, electronics, and IT as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big, warm IGF welcome to Minister Ashwini Vaishnav.
Namaskar. Thank you very much for inviting to the IGF forum. It's indeed a pleasure that so many distinguished speakers will be sharing their views in this forum. Friends, I will make three major points. The first point is about India's democracy. As you all know, India is a large country with 1.4 billion population. In the recently held general elections, we had 970 million voters, out of which about 65% of the voters exercised their franchise, and in a historic mandate, they showed their confidence in Prime Minister Modi ji and the National Democratic Alliance (NDA) government. After 6 decades, a government has been repeated for the third time. This shows how much confidence people of India have in Prime Minister Modi ji and the policies of NDA. This trust has been demonstrated throughout the country, whether it is northern India, eastern parts, southern states, western states. All the states have shown their great trust in the policies and programs that Prime Minister Modi ji has implemented in the last 10 years. This confidence in the ability of our democracy has clearly silenced so many critics who used to say that India's democracy is under threat. I would like to very emphatically say our democracy is a vibrant democracy. Our country is the mother of democracy. Our country has demonstrated that a diverse set of people can exercise their rights in a peaceful manner and give their and express their confidence in a government. There are so many strong institutions that run this process. I would especially like to thank the Election Commission of India for conducting such a massive exercise in a practically flawless way. The second point I would like to make is about the economic growth of India. The last 10 years have been years of bringing a very transformative change in the country. These transformative changes are basically premised on 4 pillars. Pillar number 1 is massive public investment in social, physical and digital infrastructure. Whether opening 315 new medical colleges, opening new Indian institutes of technology, new Indian institutes of management, opening new higher education institutions, about 390 universities, or creating one of the fastest rollout of 5G network, more than 430,000 5G radiating towers, more than 6 million miles of optical fiber throughout the country, massive investment in social, physical and digital infrastructure. This has laid a very strong foundation. Our highway construction is going at a rapid pace. Railway tracks are getting constructed at 14 kilometers a day. Last year itself, we added 5,300 kilometers of new tracks, which is the size of railway network of a country like Switzerland. So that's the pace at which infrastructure investment is happening, and that has laid a very strong foundation for economic growth. The second pillar is inclusive growth. Nowhere in the world would you find the scale, the size and the scope of improvement and investments that have been done in the lives of people at the bottom of the pyramid. The poorest of the poor in the country have today got basic facilities like a new house, drinking water coming from a tap. They've got toilets constructed. They've got new cooking gas connections. A huge, massive transformative change is happening in the rural countryside. This inclusive growth has helped the country bring out about 250 million people out of extreme poverty on multidimensional indices in the last 10 years. So this is a major change in the country which has happened. The third pillar is very big focus on manufacturing, whether it is mobile manufacturing, in which India has now become the second largest mobile manufacturer in the world, electronics manufacturing, defense manufacturing, technical textile manufacturing, drone manufacturing. Practically every sector of manufacturing has got a great momentum in the last 10 years. The fourth pillar is about simplification. More than 1,500 laws have been removed from the statute book, and these were archaic laws which had no relevance in today's life. These four pillars are intact, they are strong, they have laid a very solid foundation for economic growth, they have laid a foundation for empowering our people, they have created a momentum by which people are coming out of poverty, coming into the neo-middle class. This has given us a growth of 6 to 8% consistently, and now it's on the upper bracket of this range, and this is going to continue for next many years. Friends, I conclude with the third point. This mandate of the general elections has clearly demonstrated country's faith and trust in Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's policies, his conduct of the government, his strengthening of institutions, and our National Democratic Alliance, NDA government's overall contribution in the economic, social, political life of the country. This shows people want continuity. This shows that people have put their confidence in continuity. This continuity will make sure that our country continues to grow at a good, consistent pace, and our people's lives are transformed, and a significant change, a significant positive change comes in people's lives. I thank you very much for inviting me to the IGF, and I hope that many new ideas would come out of this forum. I would be very happy to get your feedback and listen to your ideas. Thank you very much.
So a strong message of continuity there from Minister Vaishnav, right? But events never go as planned. Things come from here and there and blow us off course as individuals and, of course, as governments. So what in practice does the next 5 years, Modi 3.0, mean? What will it mean for India's economic and foreign policy? I'm delighted now to welcome to the stage our esteemed panelists, Sanjeev Sanyal, member of the Economic Advisory Council to the PM. He's been at the center of economic policy making for the last 10 years. Where are you, Mr. Sanyal? Come on up and join us. Come this side, okay, wherever you like, come on up. And Dr. Vijay Chauthewale, who's in charge of the Foreign Affairs Department of the BJP, really a foreign affairs guru and thinker of our times. Come on, Dr. Vijay, make yourselves comfortable. Where are you? Okay, so I'm going to start with Sanjeev Sanyal, if I may. Strong message of continuity there from Minister Vaishnav. But the election results, let's be honest, were not exactly as you wanted. There was a swing away from the BJP. And some people, some investors are worried that this might have an impact on economic policy, especially on macro-financial stability and consistency. How do you respond?
So let me be clear that we are at an amazing tipping point in India's economic history. where we have reached a critical mass where the compounding process of growth is not just of impact on India, obviously it is, but also beginning to be on global scale. So let me sort of illustrate this compounding process because everybody knows it happens, but you have to near the numbers. So when India began to liberalize its economy in 1991, India's nominal GDP in USD terms was just 260 billion. Okay? It took us 16 years from there on to reach our first $1 trillion GDP level, which happened in 2007-8. Then it took us 5 years to add the next $1 trillion. So by 2014-15, we became a $2 trillion economy. From there, it should have taken us 5 years, but it actually took us 7 years because we lost 2 years in COVID. So it was as recently as 2021, 22 that we became a $3 trillion economy. Then it took us just 3 years to become, this year, a $4 trillion economy. And in another 24 months odd, we will become a $4 trillion economy. And at that, we will hit in 24 months a $5 trillion economy.
So are you saying the timelines are now shrinking to such an extent that the momentum is built in?
Absolutely. So by the time we become a $5 trillion economy in 2027, we will be the world's third largest economy. So you can see this momentum is dramatically building up. But the key point here is that this is about sustaining compounding. Consistency. So, last year we did 8.2% GDP growth rate. This year we'll do a little over 7%. That's what's expected. Now, all we need to do is basically keep doing this. Because if we keep doing this, by 2047, we will be a $30 to $31 trillion economy. So compounding is very powerful. That's how China got here. China's economy was just as 30 years ago, China's economy and our economy are the same size. Therefore, very importantly, macroeconomic stability. There is always a demand sometimes, why don't we just push for it through fiscal means or push the banking system to expand a bit faster and so on? Bad idea. Because this is about keeping this compounding process going. So even at the height of COVID, you will remember, we in India were very restrained in our fiscal and monetary response. Yes, we did what was necessary for the poor and to keep MSMEs and so on going, but we didn't blow the bank up for this. Similarly, we have spent a lot of effort cleaning up our banking system. I have absolutely no intention of going through yet another banking cleanup ever in my life. But very, very important that we do that. Similarly, look at our foreign exchange reserves. We now have more foreign exchange reserves than external debt. India is actually a small net creditor country to the rest of the world. The point I'm making to you is keep compounding, and because the world is an uncertain place, build all kinds of buffers in the system so that we don't get thrown off course.
So systematic, stable, consistent. That's what I took away, ladies and gentlemen. What did you? Perhaps put it on social media, #IGF. Let's move to foreign policy for a moment. Dr. Vijay, I was really surprised to see that there was foreign policy mention on the campaign trail in the Indian election, right? Now, this never happens. It hasn't happened in the UK in this campaign currently. It hardly ever happens in India. And it seemed to go down quite well with voters. What do you make of that?
See, historically, foreign policy was discussed among common people, and especially during elections, was only pertaining to our western neighbor, Pakistan, and that too with respect to the terrorism. But what has happened in last 10 years is, as I call it, as a democratization of India's foreign policy. That means today on a person who is a street chai vendor also has an opinion and he is aware of India's foreign policy. The great credit of this transformation definitely goes to Prime Minister Modi, who has made foreign policy as is one of the, I would say, one of the tallest endpoint in his tenure. And his personal engagement with world leaders, the initiatives that this government has taken place, and also his personal chemistry with the world leaders.
And India standing tall on the world stage seems to be a very popular thing.
Very popular.
Huh?
And therefore, looks like, see the way India has celebrated G20 event. It is unprecedented. India has raised bar to such a height that actually Brazilian Prime Minister has accepted it, that it's very difficult to replicate India's way to organize G20, and many more. And therefore, people on the ground are seeing the impact of it. The value of Indian passport has gone up. The way India has handled COVID crisis, especially not only for itself, but also for the many part of the world, and how India has supported many countries who were more vulnerable in getting access to the medicines, to the vaccines. So India's humanitarian effect, humanitarian efforts, the way India is doing a very niche handling the global crisis, such as Ukraine, Russia, or Gaza, Israel, all these are accumulated, and therefore foreign policy has become a matter of discussion in Indian psyche.
Yeah, which is, to my mind, a huge surprise, and actually a really good thing. Sanjeev Sanyal, so let's talk about how you continue the momentum of growth, which is so vital. The last 10 years have seen a remarkable record of growth, high levels of growth, huge construction boom and an infrastructure boom, as we heard from Minister Vaishnav. What hasn't really taken place on scale and as hoped was a manufacturing takeoff, a lift-off, as it were. Now, I know that you personally are closely involved in trying to unjam these jammed-up procedures. Minister Vaishnav talked about all these obsolete laws that are being torn up, yeah? So can you tell us about what you are doing now to try and make life easier for both Indian and outside businesses that want to invest in making things in India?
So let me say very clearly that we are unapologetic supply-siders in that we believe that India's growth requires continuous efforts to reform and build. There's nothing sort of natural about rapid economic growth. You have to keep investing into it. So what are the investments you need? First of all, you need to upgrade India's infrastructure. So you heard some of the efforts being done. We are dramatically changing, laying out highways, airports, ports. If you go to Mumbai, you'll see cranes everywhere. In fact, Mumbai right now is the highest concentration of cranes anywhere in the world. So there is a huge amount of infrastructure being built. That's obviously needed for manufacturing. Secondly, we are doing, getting rid of a large number of bureaucratic and other hassles that used to, and still does to some extent, constrain India's.
So give us an example.
So one good example of something that I am personally working on is patents. Just 7 years ago, patents,
right.
Intellectual property. Just 7 years ago, India used to only do 9,980 patents a year. Okay? Today, the last financial year, we did 103,000 patents. That's the number we granted.
Wow. So that's a what, 12-fold increase or something?
Yeah, in 7 years, more than 10 times increase.
And what impact do you hope something like that will have now?
So this is just one thing.
Intellectual work is being done. How does that translate into growth?
So what happens is that you suddenly make it radically easier to do business in India, right? So supposing if you were into cutting-edge technology and you're trying to patent something, it takes you 5-7 years to get your patent. Look, technology moves on.
Yeah,
we are now among the fastest places to do technological changes. Similarly, another thing, since this is all about creative destruction, shutting down a company, right? May seem like, everybody loves ease of entry, but for a healthy economy, you need ease of exit. It used to take years to shut down a company in India, even when all the paperwork had been done and everybody agreed that this had to be shut down. And I'm not talking here about bankruptcy. This is about natural shutting down of companies, which is common, but 90% of companies are voluntarily shut down. It used to take up to 4 years to shut it down. We made a bunch of changes in the procedure. The average company shutdown for a voluntary shutdown is only 90 days, which is the fastest in the world.
Wow.
So we are doing lots of these kinds of changes.
So you have to get that message out, right? Because I don't think most people are aware of that.
These are nuts and bolts changes, very boring.
What about customs? And the customs procedures in India are notoriously slow and, headache-inducing.
So there are two things. One is just the physical infrastructure, rapidly being upgraded. Two, we had been, I'll just show you how minor things can have huge impact. So we had made large parts of this system of customs paperless, okay? But each part in it, for some reason, did not talk to the other part. So you did it all paperless, then you printed it all out, went to the next stage, loaded it all into the system and so on. There were 3 such steps. Now, all we needed to do, and imagine this is the world's IT hub, and this was how it was, till just a year ago, connected them through, and you can see how fast, suddenly you literally remove several days from the process. And so in this way, we are rapidly smoothing out these things. So for example, in our airports, for Bangalore Airport, for example, the export of a product, from the time it turns up at the airport to the time it takes off is between 3 to 6 hours, which is faster than anything in China also. Wow. So our seaports now need to be that level of efficiency.
And so let's hope you can bring all that together to keep the growth going.
Absolutely. Growth is all about...
I just want to bring Dr. Vijay in at this point. Dr. Vijay, something that's been puzzling me is how India has somehow managed to do this kind of extraordinary diplomatic dance, I'm going to call it, managing to build its relationship with Russia on the one hand and America on the other hand, who are barely speaking to each other, without really making concessions to either side. What's going on? How has it pulled that out, and is that sustainable?
So historically, during Cold War, India used to have this policy of non-alignment, which essentially was a passive policy, that between the fight of 2 giants, it's better to India remain aloof. What has changed now that India is willing and actively pursuing engagement with practically everyone who matters. And that, what they call it as a multilateralism, is not only on paper, but also it is serving, number one, India's interest. For example, all of you know, and you have, almost all of you must have heard what Dr. Jaishankar has said when he was asked that why you are buying oil from Russia. And we know that if we don't buy oil from Russia, and Sanjay can tell more about it, that the oil prices would have gone to the unsustainable level, unaffordable level to India. And also it would have impacted adversely the oil prices globally because over-dependence on few countries. And that is precisely what India has done as far as oil from Russia is concerned. But at the same time, Prime Minister has said that war is not, this is not the era of war, very clearly giving the message. Similarly, in Gaza-Israel conflict, Prime Minister has said that yes, 7th October attack was a terrorist attack, but at the same time, the civilian casualties should be minimized and humanitarian aid can go unhindered. And third is the long-term solution is a 2-state policy. So India has made its positions very clear, and therefore it may not be liked by everyone, but everyone appreciates it.
But some people may be scratching their heads, thinking to themselves,
absolutely, yeah.
How long can you manage to ride 2 horses like this?
It's not why you are talking only 2 horses.
Right?
India will ride multiple horses. Because that is the way it has to be. And therefore, if you see, India is a member of G20. It is now almost permanent invitee of G7. India is a very important partner in Quad. But at the same time, India is also an important member of SCO and BRICS.
But there's always the risk, isn't there, Dr. Vijay, that you could jeopardize the very important relationship with the US. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on that? How do you make sure it doesn't backfire?
I doubt that perception is correct. US has actually encouraged when we started buying oil from Russia, and they understood it. And if you see the statements, they never talked about it. There were much more reservations from the European side. I agree with you. But the thing is that the world has accepted that India is not going to be focused on one country or one region, but they will do, and therefore India's interests are going to be the primary driver as far as India's foreign policy is concerned. And at the same time, they are doing a lot of good for the rest of the world. India's initiative on Global South, on India's insistence, African Union has become the member of G20 first time. And you must have seen the reaction of African representatives during G20 summit in Delhi. What India has done in the vaccine diplomacy, India provided vaccine to 90 countries. Some major part of has gone free. India has provided medicines. And therefore, what India is doing for the global good is also appreciated, because it is not possible for any one country to do all these things. So India is also contributing to its share, sometimes beyond whatever is expected from it, and it is appreciated. And therefore, this India's apparently divergent positions on various global matters are well understood for majority of the world.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vijay. I'm going to put one final question, and I think I'll put it to Sanjeev Sanyal. So make it concrete for us. Paint a picture for us then. What will doing business in India look like in 5 years' time? How is it going to be easier? How is it going to be transformed?
So first of all, we will provide you with world-class infrastructure. The best there is, we will provide you. We obviously have a large domestic market. People don't realize that till we introduced the GST, we were actually divided into small markets. So we, of course, signed a free trade agreement with ourselves, which was the unified market through the GST. So you now have a unified market. We have the world's largest workforce by the end of this decade, and increasingly more skilled, because as we are getting into new areas, in fact, there are areas where we are at the cutting edge. Many of the chips you use are actually designed in India. We will now begin manufacturing those chips also in India. So there are many areas we have a high skill, large domestic market, high quality infrastructure, and increasingly we are getting rid of all these tiny irritants, which we recognize got in the way of doing business in India, and we recognize that. So they may still be there, but one change at a time, nuts and bolts are being fixed, and doing business in India is becoming radically easier than it used to be in the past.
So that mass manufacturing economic model that took China out of extreme poverty, has the bus gone by for India, do you think? Does India have to find a different economic model?
So it'll be a little bit different. First of all, remember, when we are going through this phase, services is tradable in a way that wasn't 20 years ago. So we will use that because it plays to our strength. So services will be a much bigger part of our story than was in China. But for manufacturing as well, we will be a part of the global supply chain. There is one issue, however, which is an issue really with the rest of the world. Unfortunately, demand growth in the rest of the world has not been very strong for several years now, particularly in Europe. And so there is a major market that is not growing. Even though the US is growing, it's sort of growing in a faltering sort of way. So in that environment, obviously, it is not easy for us to kind of do the same thing that China did. And in fact, even last year's 8% GDP growth rate was almost entirely domestically driven, very little contribution from exports. So we are being forced to do it in our own way. But the world goes through cycles. There will be a time when Europe and the North Atlantic will begin growing faster. And we are quite confident at that stage we will grow at 10% because we'll be able to export. But meanwhile, what we need to do is to build up our own strengths, build the capacities, build the skills, build the infrastructure, make sure those systems are in place to take advantage of the cycles. Even China invested for many, many years, got its act together, then it got a great run in the 2000s for about 7-8 years. That's when it really took off. But we have to be ready for those things to happen, because things go in cycles. That cycle point will come too for us as well. And Absolutely. At that time, we will do it. But
it's being consistent and being nimble at the same time.
Absolutely.
That's the great art, isn't
yes.
it? Sanjeev Sanyal, Dr. Vijay Chauthiwala, it's been such a pleasure having you with us at India Global Forum 2024.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sanjay, Vijay, Sanjeev, thank you so much. There's so much more for us to talk about. Thank you for being here. A reminder, you can join the conversation throughout this week on the official India Global Forum hashtag. Just use the IGF London hashtag to share that conversation and get involved wherever you are. So, up next, a man who needs very little by way of introduction. He is the reason that we are all here today. He's been pivotal in growing those links between the UK and India. He is the founder and the chairman of the India Global Forum. His mission is to ignite dialogue, to spur new thinking on global trade, investment, sustainability, innovation, geopolitics, and culture. IGF London, as we said, is now in its 6th year. As you know, it is a week that is focused around fostering strategic business cultural ties between the UK and India. So before we welcome him to the stage once again, take a look at this.
India is a country steeped in a rich history of conversations, dialogues, and discourse. You have examples abound of this quintessential Indian tradition. One of the earliest and most revered examples of conversations in Indian history is the Bhagavad Gita, a sacred text that captures a dialogue between Lord Krishna and the warrior prince Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. This timeless conversation delves into profound philosophical and ethical discussions, exploring the concepts of duty, righteousness, and the nature of existence. Beyond the scriptures, India's vibrant streets have been witness to another form of dialogue known as Nukkad Sabhas, or street corner meetings. These grassroots gatherings have been a traditional part of Indian culture, providing a platform for communities to discuss various political, social, and cultural issues. In contemporary times, the tradition of dialogue and discourse continues with the concept of Jan Samvads, or people's dialogues. These forums aim to engage citizens in conversations that address pressing issues, promoting democratic values and civic participation. In a sense, India's history is replete with instances where conversations have been the cornerstone of intellectual and cultural exchange. And India Global Forum is carrying forward that legacy. As a platform dedicated to fostering dialogues for global partnerships, India Global Forum embodies this rich tradition, creating avenues for an exchange of ideas, expertise, and experiences that transcend boundaries and connect diverse perspectives from around the world. India Global Forum serves as a catalyst for contemporary dialogues, offering a space where global leaders, thinkers, and visionaries converge to address critical issues of our times.
So, please welcome my friend, the founder and the chairman of the India Global Forum, Manoj Ladwa.
Thank you ever so much, Ben, Your Excellencies, friends. It all starts with a conversation. Whether it's a new friendship, a new job, a new business relationship, or even, let's say, negotiating a free trade agreement. It all starts with a conversation. Conversations are the cornerstone of all the positive things we want to achieve. They are the cornerstone of democracy itself. And that's why at India Global Forum, we pride ourselves for being the home of meaningful, impactful conversations. Conversations about contemporary India that build bridges and pathways to limitless opportunities. As we have heard earlier this afternoon, India is back on the move, and Prime Minister Modi firmly in the driving seat. There is no bigger opportunity, no better opportunity than the opportunity to be part of the journey where the world's largest democracy the world's most populous nation, transforms herself in the next 2.5 decades to take her place as amongst one of the most developed nations in the world. Yes, you have heard it before, and no doubt you will hear it many, many times again. The Viksit Bharat mission. Friends, this is nothing short than the opportunity of this century. And guess what? This is one bet with some insider knowledge from IGF that's worth taking. So across this week, and as always at IGF, we'll hear from the great and the famous, the most influential and the most successful. On business, hard-nosed politics, policy, climate action, science, technology, the arts, and culture. Over 350 speakers from the most diverse backgrounds, engaging in the most insightful conversations. But guess what? Beyond the global headlines that the IGF platform now generates, friends, there are some hidden gems. For instance, we'll hear from Kevisato Sanyo, the founder of NagaEd, an amazing startup providing digitally enabled education for tribal and indigenous communities in the North Indian state of Nagaland. And now, with the help of IGF, Kevisato and his team are looking to go global. Margaret, the founder of Ananda Devices, her groundbreaking technology rapidly grows the human nervous system on a chip, enabling firms to perform testing and disease modeling that's up to 50 times faster and a staggering 90% more cost-effective. Kulsum's the founder of the Hotur Foundation. She's dedicated her life to empowering acid attack victims, giving these courageous women a powerful voice and a platform to display their remarkable talents. Their creations have won acclaim from global icons like Katy Perry and the luxury brand Gucci. And from Wednesday, we will have opportunities to meet and hear from Dr. Arunachalam, the inspiration behind Bollywood megastar Akshay Kumar's super hit film Padman. Arunachalam is a social justice warrior whose zeal has ensured that rural women have access to low-cost sanitary pads, thereby revolutionizing menstrual hygiene, a topic that is often regarded as taboo in many parts of the world. And friends, many, many more inspiring speakers are joining the conversation this week. It's personally fulfilling for me that IGF has become such an enabler for showcasing great initiatives and driving greater and more meaningful outcomes. And I'm especially proud that we are having these conversations here in the United Kingdom. However, when some people talk about the UK-India relationship, I hear talk about the burden of history, of the drag of history on this relationship. Friends, let's be clear. We have a global opportunity now. India is neither a burden, nor is it about history. This is about opportunity. This is about our future, where we can look firmly and confidently to the future. And friends, whilst we are at it, I am fed up now of people talking the UK down. Whilst there is a lot that can be done and must be done, especially to make this great country ready for the huge technological opportunities that are coming our way, The UK, and especially the UK-India relationship, has much to offer each other and to offer the world. The fifth and sixth largest economies coming together, working together, bringing together all their strengths in skills, innovation, business, finance, trade, and security together. A modern partnership of true equals, a partnership for a fairer, more just, and yes, a more exciting future for us all. That's the achievement that we seek. Friends, as I have said and written about on many, many occasions before, we have all the makings of a winning partnership. Last year, many of you will recall that on this very stage, we heard from Sir Keir Starmer. Sir Keir spoke about his determination to reset the Labour relationship with India and British Indians. This year, I'm therefore delighted that despite a hectic election campaign schedule, the Shadow Foreign Secretary has chosen to be here with us this afternoon. So David, as I welcome you to the IGF stage, in just a few days' time, you may well become one of the most powerful people in this country. In fact, one of the most influential figures on the world stage. And with this distinct possibility in mind, I have one respect, and I know I speak for many here in this room and elsewhere. Whilst there is the inevitability of niggling issues along the way, I repeat what I have said on occasions before. This relationship, the UK-India relationship, is now firmly of deep strategic importance. We cannot and must not let the vagaries of domestic politics derail what could well be a defining relationship of our times. I know David as someone who has been a long-standing friend of India. It will all be so very clear to you. And so, friends, it's my privilege to welcome my friend, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, and currently the Labour candidate for Tottenham, the Right Honourable David Lammy.
Well, friends, thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for welcoming me here at the India Global Forum, which continues to grow from strength to strength. And I wanted, first of all, to thank you, Manoj, for the work that you do and for the tireless efforts not only bringing us together, but to help us in listening and learning. Very, very grateful indeed. And I can only hope that you might return to the Labour family soon. Our gathering here is a dazzling example of the extraordinary contribution of British Indians, who are not only our largest diaspora community, but without whom it would be hard, really, even to imagine modern Britain as we know it. There is not one town, not one high street, not one bank, not one university that is not part of this living bridge tying our islands to the great country of India. Friends, your work is a living embodiment of the wisdom from the great holy texts, the Upanishad, evoked by so many Indian leaders from Nehru to Modi, espoused by so many of India's greatest diplomats, from the great Krishna Menon to my friend Dr. Deshankar. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is one family, a celebration of democracy. Yes, I'm joining you from the campaign trail, and this is my 8th general election. I've known the thrill of victory and the bitterness of defeat, the momentum of knowing the country is behind you, or that sinking feeling you get in your stomach of knowing that you failed to win their trust. But every time an election rolls out, even when the results don't quite pan out the way that you'd like them to, I feel a joy in my heart at the working of democracy, the door knocking that we do, the counts that we attend, the rosettes that we wear. It all gives me a joy, as it's the millions of people out there making democracy together, our nation being out there, being the values that we hold, and in the spirit of celebration, that brings me to our forum today. Because I deeply believe that India's democratic elections, with almost 1 billion voters, are the most important statement, the most important validation, not only of the democratic ideal, but of democratic practice in today's global community. This is something that binds us together, not only as politicians, not only as voters, but as nations and civilizations with a shared vision of what human dignity and human freedom really are. And this is what Gandhi meant when he said democracy, disciplined and enlightened, is the finest thing in the world. Friends, we all know the challenges democracies, including our own, face. The deep fakes, the disinformation. But this is what we hold on to and is what we believe. India is a superpower. And Indian democracy, what a thing to celebrate. What a thing to give us hope. What a moment to again congratulate Narendra Modi for forming a new government. That if we have the privilege to serve, we look forward to working closely with. And what a moment to aspire and to dream, not just in Hyderabad or Mumbai, but here in Britain, because India is a superpower, 1.4 billion people strong, the largest country in the world, an economic superpower, set to become the world's 3rd largest economy by 2030, a technological superpower, astonishing the world, from the Gurgaon to Bangalore, from Wipro to Tata Consultancy Services, a vaccine superpower, leading the world from Pune to extraordinary Serum Institute of India, a cultural superpower as well, of course, from Bollywood to the Ramoji Film City, and a literary superpower, from Anita Desai to Amitav Ghosh, carrying the novel forward as a form and revealing the world to us with every page. A superpower that is the future of Asia, the future of the English language, with almost 4 times as many English speakers than here in the UK, and the future of democracy itself. India contributes so much to British prosperity already. Last year, India was our second largest foreign direct investment contributor. Over 950 Indian companies are employing over 100,000 people here in the UK. But it could be so much more, as India is only our 12th largest trading partner. And that is why Sir Keir Starmer changed Labour Party. And in that changed Labour Party, our aspiration for a free trade deal between our two nations is a floor, not a ceiling on our ambitions. And why our leader has set his sights on, yes, a new UK-India strategic partnership that focuses on economic security, domestic security, and global security. And announcing his intentions on this very same stage last year, we need a reset and a relaunch of our relationship, because I'm afraid it's our view that the Conservatives have time and time again overpromised and under-delivered when it comes to India. And that leaves me frustrated. Frustrated at the missed opportunities, frustrated at the shared prosperity that's passing us both by, which is our ambition over this next period. And we hope for a 10-year renewal project, but over this next period to unlock. Many Diwalis have come and gone without a trade deal, and too many businesses have been left waiting. So my message to Minister Sitharaman and Minister Goyal is that Labour is ready to go. Let's finally get our free trade deal done, finished, over, and we move on. And India is not just a priority for our leader. India is a priority for me. I promise you, I will be in India if we get over the line before the end of next month. Because traveling to India with my colleague Johnny Reynolds, our Shadow Secretary of State for Business and Trade, our mission was explicit. And it's also the case that our deputy leader, Angela Rayner, when she travelled to India, meeting with multiple business groups to explain that the government led by Sir Keir Starmer will prioritise growth. And that we come not just to lecture, but to listen. And that is very important. And one lesson that I learned was about the railways. India's railways are now 94% electrified. Here in Britain, the rate currently stands as 38% electrified. We've got something to learn. With the current government planning to reach net zero on the railways by 2050, a full 2 decades after India. Friends, Britain needs a reset with the global south, and that begins in India. And with Labour, I've got to tell you, the days of Boris Johnson reciting that old verse from Rudyard Kipling in Asia are over. If I recite a poem, it will be by Tagore, friends. We want to learn and we want to collaborate. From tech and digital innovation, from digital public infrastructure to our physical public infrastructure, from the green transition to global vaccines, to understanding the outstanding economic transformation led by successive now Indian governments, and how we can apply those lessons here in the UK to achieve Keir Starmer's missions. Because with a superpower like India, the areas of cooperation and the areas of learning are limitless. India and climate is a good example. Friends, the meaning of friendship, it seems to me, is solidarity. And we are in solidarity with India. And we have the extreme heat wave. Sorry, when you have the extreme heat waves and the suffering in your cities, with daily temperatures regularly reaching over 40 degrees centigrade, peaking at nearly 50 degrees centigrade since May, this shows that climate breakdown is here. And this is why the Labour Party, with our internationalism and our commitment to net zero, will make climate action a priority. We're committed to a new climate change envoy and a step up on the international scene, reversing the damage that Rishi Sunak did to our credibility when he ripped up our climate targets and came up with all sorts of nonsense about 7 recycling bins. With us, Britain will be back. And Keir Starmer is determined to never skip a climate summit as crucial as COP. Keir will forge on with a new energy transition that we desperately need, with a commitment to clean power by 2030 at home and leading a clean power alliance abroad. There can be no energy transition without an Indian energy transition. India is the dispensable partner, not only to Britain, but the whole developed world. And together, we must work together in this essential mission. And to make sure that this year's shocking heat wave does not become a new normality for our children and grandchildren, along with so many other climate disasters menacing us in the southern and the northern hemisphere alike. And then we come on to security. This is our message to our friends forming India's new government and across the political divide. We are with you when you stand up to stop climate change, but our solidarity goes beyond climate and extends to security. Friends, let me tell you about how I see things and how I approach foreign policy. I take the world as it is, and in these difficult times, as the great promise, as the great peril which we now see in our world. This is who we are. We stand for a rules-based order and against those who wish to redraw borders by force with a new form of imperialism like Mr. Putin in Europe. And those in Asia who wish to impose their will on their neighbours, denying them free choices. This is obvious to us in this room, but sadly not always to those in foreign policy. Europe and Asia are not two separate worlds. We see this in North Korean shells being fired at Ukrainian defenders in the Donbass, and we see this in the political and material support Beijing has given to the Kremlin. China should not throw its lot in with Putin's coalition of Moscow, Tehran, or Pyongyang. Friends, as our rivals deepen their cooperation, we must deepen our cooperation, because we are committed to a free and open Indo-Pacific, just like India is. And in this challenging environment, Britain will remain and seek to ramp up the security partnership with India, from military to maritime security, from cyber to critical and emerging technologies, from defense and industrial cooperation to supply chain security. We are India's friends, and we are with her and right behind her. This is our message, which the UK Carrier Strike Group will carry to the Indian Ocean in 2025, to train and operate with Indian forces in a world that is more and more contested. This is a friendship. It's not only made in speeches, but in real actions in the real world. There are a few who fail to appreciate that Britain's relationship with India is the great story of our past, leaving us inextricably linked. And the best place to see it is not in Whitehall, but on the Rajpath, but in our family trees. Almost 3% of the population here is of Indian origin. And this, friends, is personal to me. I get our history, our shared history, because these are the tides that made me. My great-great-grandmother was an Indian from Calcutta who set sail as an indentured laborer to the Caribbean, where my parents were born. And I see this in Guyana, and I look at the diversity of that great country, and I see this, of course, in India, which in some ways is one of the motherlands of that country. Trade and technology. From Gurgaon to Pune and Bangalore will transform Birmingham, Cardiff, Brighton. Today, India is the superpower, and with our shared democracy, our shared innovation, our shared ambition for a green, prosperous world, we can show together and share together in these words that are so true. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is one family. Thank you very much for having me.
David, please sit down. If we can steal you for a few more minutes off the campaign trail. Big, powerful messages there, right? We are with you. What does it actually mean? Before we deep dive into some of those messages to the conference, can I quickly ask you a question about the campaign trail? According to the opinion polls, you're going to have a thumping majority after the election next week. The Prime Minister himself might lose his seat. So dare I ask you, how are you feeling, David Lammy?
Well, look, I said that this is my 8th general election. I've seen the ups, I've seen the downs. This weekend, I will have been in politics here in the UK for 24 years. I think the polls feel a little bit overstated, and I think it's important to recognise that the British Labour Party was very, very severely beaten in the 2019 elections. We had our worst results since 1935. So it's important, and it doesn't get, the commentators don't pick this up, it's important to understand that we're coming from a very low base.
It's a huge mountain to climb.
It's a very, very low base. I think the second thing, and those in this room who've known the UK for many years will detect also, there is not the enthusiasm for politics, full stop, that we had in 1997. In fact, there's quite a lot of cynicism.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
In the electorate. And it may be that, unfortunately, one of the stories is that too many people decide not to vote in the election. So let us see where we get to. But I'm on the more conservative end, if I might say.
We hear you. Veteran politician speaking
of
there.
the Labour Party in relation to these things.
Yeah, you dare not jinx it, right,
Yeah.
David? Okay, so now you gave us some big, strong messages there in your keynote address. I'm going to pick up on some of them. Free trade agreement, right? You said too many Diwalis have gone past without us seeing an FTA, right? But our Labour is ready to go. You said, let's finally do it. So what does that mean to get it across the line? What kind of concessions will you be prepared to make, David Lammy?
Well, look, let me just say one thing, and I genuinely believe this. I said this in India when I was there a few months ago. I'll say it again. I think it was well understood in India, and it's important here too. The relationship with the United Kingdom and India has to be a relationship that goes beyond whoever is in office. It's just too important and too big. And I hope that if there is a change of government here in the next few days, this is the opportunity to demonstrate that. It's obviously a relationship that the United Kingdom has with America, with allies in Europe. I would like to see India in that same box. And then I want to say this, that when I was in discussion with Indian colleagues, and I went with my colleague, Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds, it was clear in discussions that the things that were sticking, we believed we could get over the line, and we want to get over the line.
So one of the sticking points is the issue of travel and mobility, getting visas for Indian students who are basically holding up the British education tertiary system, right? Universities in Britain would collapse without Indian students coming in large numbers. It's true, isn't it? India's the second biggest source of foreign direct investment in the UK, and yet Indian business travelers find it really difficult to get visas. This is crazy, right, in terms of UK growth. But it's become a very sensitive issue. So do you think Labour recognises that it has to be practical about travel from India?
Look, I don't want to be naive to this issue coming up as part of this election cycle, and you can all see what the news says, and let us see who might end up in Parliament, because there are certain individuals that could come into Parliament for the first time, if you believe some of these polls. So let's see. But I do recognise the huge contribution that Indian students make to higher education, and to this country. I also recognise the long-standing issues that have been raised over the last few years, particularly about the visa regime. All of these we will take to office, and the Foreign Secretary's in a very usual position in making representation to the Home Secretary and usually losing. But let's see where we get to.
So he says, I hear you, but I'm not promising anything just yet. We're still in the middle of a campaign. Okay, so we are with you, you said, a big message to India. But we know that many Indians look askance at the Labour Party. Keir Starmer himself last year said that you need to reset relations. What does that mean? How do you reset relations? Make it a little bit more tangible for us, beyond the slogans.
I think that if we get over the line, I'm pretty clear from what I've that the few occasions now that I've met Dr. Sheikh Shankar, there's a commitment to that UK-India partnership, whoever is in government. That's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, it requires proper engagement and a relational context, and that does mean travel, not just by me in the Foreign Office, but by ministers across the piece. I've said, actually, one of the problems with, I think, the trade deal under this last government is it was sort of put there as the ceiling on our ambition, and I think it's the floor. and I think we've got to go beyond that. I'm really excited.
Beyond means what? I mean, it's a lovely slogan.
Look, it means
it should be the floor.
I think
ceiling.
you'll see. I think there are things we can achieve in the first 100 days. I think that there's cooperation that there's more that we can do, particularly on tech, innovation, quantum, AI in terms of partnership, more partnerships between our universities. I think there's more that we can do together on defense. We've got shared security interests that I think we can work together on. All of those are active files. By the way, also, it's clear, and the pandemic demonstrated this, that pharmaceuticals and health, as we seek to lift the NHS back to where it's always under a Labour government, I think there are key partnerships with our Indian friends, as you see the huge successes in India on health economy that we can work together on.
You were in India, right? Only a few months ago.
Yes, I was.
Why do you want to return so soon?
Well, because it's the land of my great-grandmother and I like the curries. Why would you not return?
Then you've got to go to Kolkata.
No, it's interesting. I mean, how can I say this? I think if I have the privilege of becoming Foreign Secretary in a few days' time, I will be a Foreign Secretary that's pretty well travelled in what would traditionally be described as the Global South. I have been to India many times. I have been to India more times than some European countries. I'm not going to name them, but that's the case. I hadn't been to India for 5 or 6 years from this last trip. So there had been a little gap. And what I saw was just the tremendous growth. I saw it on the streets. I was reading these briefings that had come from the Foreign Office, and they were using this phrase, middle power. And I was crossing, middle power? Nonsense. It's a superpower. What are you talking about? You could feel it. I thought that there was the infrastructure of the country is changing. The new roads.
It's unrecognizable some parts.
Completely Delhi, I thought, was in a much healthier position than I remembered previously. So, look, you can see it all around you. And then when I was meeting with ministers and hearing the advances, I was just hugely impressed. So why would you go back to India? You would never ask me, why would you go back within a few months to Silicon Valley? Of course you go there for the dynamism. India is the same.
Touché, David Lammy. So tell us a bit more about the areas in which you can learn and collaborate. You said we don't want to lecture, we want to learn and collaborate. You mentioned security. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, before I get to the security piece, let's just sort of travel through the areas. India has increased its footprint substantially in the continent of Africa. It's opened embassies. It's got a much bigger footprint than it has when the Labour Party was last in power. I think it's fair to say when the Labour Party was in power last, we were a development superpower. We want to get back to that, but we recognise that this is now a world of partnership. I think there's so much we can do in partnership with India. India's made huge advances on the digital front. Advances that actually you often would not see in the British system, certainly in terms of how payments are made, welfare is organised. There's innovation there that we can work together on domestically.
One government joined up digital way of working. In right?
Absolutely.
Do you think we could do that in Britain?
Oh, well, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great? But I think that we can work in partnership also to help some of the poorest countries in the world accelerate quickly, if you see, at this point in time. So there's partnership there. And clearly there's key partnership on areas of future tech areas, AI being one, quantum being another. There's particular expertise that sits in India. There's particular expertise that sits here in the UK. That is a partnership worth investing in. And then the other area I raised was health, pharmaceuticals, where again, there is a combined ability to punch above our weight, and a flexibility, frankly, that we have here in the UK now that we're outside of the European Union that I think that we should build on over the coming months. Much of that we can move on quickly. On the security side, I would be, and if the Labour Party get over the line, this is a tough geopolitical environment, let us be honest. It's the toughest geopolitical environment that we've seen in many, many years. We have war here in Europe. We've got real challenges in the Middle East, of course. And there are huge concerns in the Indo-Pacific. And I know that those are concerns that the Indians share. They raise those concerns with me. And therefore, we're seeing greater partnership, if you like, and the ability to work jointly on the military side. There's more that we can do together, getting over some of the security barriers that have historically stood between us.
Yeah, because that's really very early days, isn't it? Any kind of security partnership. So a long way to go down there in order to build a relationship, reset the relationship.
I don't think that's an area where we should sit back. It's an area where we have to redouble our efforts.
Okay. I'd like to just widen our conversation, broaden our conversation a bit now, if you don't mind, David Lammy. President Macron has said that France is ready to usurp Britain's traditional role as India's gateway to Europe. So, your thoughts, really. Has Brexit cost the UK its strategic position as a gateway into Europe for other countries like India and elsewhere?
I think that this is an opportunity at this election to turn the page on a period where we have been just too insular following that decision to exit the European Union. What we've said is that we want a reset with Europe. They are our friends, not our foes, as I think Liz Truss described President Macron. We have an opportunity for a new UK-EU security pact, which I think is welcomed across the European Union family. We're a review of the TCA, our trade agreement with Europe coming up. So we can turn the page on some of the rancor of the past. And I do think there are some flexibilities that we have outside of the European Union, and that actually is an opportunity for us and India if we can march forward. The truth is that there are some key areas where, and certainly on the defence fronts, that is one of them. It's still the case that the United Kingdom and France represents about 50% of Europe's defence capacity. So there are key areas where we work together.
But to get access to the market, you have to make major concessions on free movement of people. And that's not going to be an easy win, is it?
We have ruled out free movement. We've ruled out re-entering the single market and the customs union. We're really, really clear about that. We had a divorce. It was a bitter divorce. It went on for years. I know there are some that want us to get married again, but I think
there are many that would like.
We have to at least start with a first date. And if we get over the line with the reset that we've indicated, we can begin that journey. And the security pact, the TCA review, is the opportunity for us to build on that relationship and get some of the trust back that was lost.
We hear you. Now, Keir Starmer has broadly aligned himself with many of the foreign policy positions of the current government on Ukraine, unsurprisingly, a bit more surprisingly on Gaza, which may cost you a few votes. So what kind of shifts are we going to see under a Labour regime, if there's a Labour regime, on these big issues of the day?
Look, we're not in the business of doing the hokey-cokey for the sake of it. We're not in the business of being partisan for the sake of it, and therefore we were really clear from the beginning that we were not going to play party politics with Ukraine and those people fighting for their freedom, and in the very delicate situation that is the Israel-Gaza. We've been very clear right from the beginning that we are not in the room having to make detailed negotiations. So that was not an area where we were prepared to play party politics. We have been clear on the importance of international law. We have been clear on the importance of aid into Gaza. We have been clear on getting those hostages out, hugely important. We're very clear and committed to a two-state solution too. But I think that the tonal shift that you'll see, the resets that you'll see under a Labour government is a reset with Europe, a reset on climate, and I spent a lot of time on climate, and a reset on growth. And that's why I've set out, and I'd encourage anyone to read it, in Foreign Affairs, progressive realism underpinning a Labour positioning on foreign policy, which is we will meet the world as it is, not as we would wish it to be. We work with partners where we can find them. Growth must be the underpinning of a Foreign Office led by me. And
a reset with India.
And we want to build with India because, look, let me just do a straw poll. I'm going to do a straw poll in this room because I know what the straw poll is going to be. Put your hands up if you think that the UK-India relationship is underperforming. Well, you see the room.
Yeah,
it is
40%?
my job.
Yeah.
It is my job, alongside Keir Starmer, over the coming years, to fix that, so that when we are sitting here in a few years' time, those hands don't go up.
David Lammy, good luck. Great to have you with us. Really appreciate your time. Such a busy time. Pleasure having you with us. David Lammy, the Right Honourable David Lammy, I should say. So our next conversation is going to take this theme further, how to deepen the UK-India partnership. And I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Indian High Commissioner to the UK, His Excellency Mr. Vikram Doraiswamy. And I'd like to ask him how he sees this bilateral partnership with the UK moving forward, the reset we've been hearing about. High Commissioner, are you mic'd up?
I left my papers behind. Is this working? Yeah, thanks.
You're in the hot seat now. Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
So David Lammy, we just heard, said Labour is ready to go with a free trade agreement. Is India ready to go?
Of course. It's been in the new government's 100 days priority. It's something that we have...
Oh, it is?
Oh, yes.
Right, in
absolutely.
the 100 days priority. Okay.
In fact, if I'm not
That's
wrong...
good to know, isn't it?
It's one of 2 FTAs that's in the 100-day priority.
Okay.
Which means we are confident that broadly there is a good package on the table and that we'd love to be able to conclude this with whomever the British people choose to have govern.
Can you give us a sneak peek into the...
No, well...
I know it's still being negotiated, but something? A tidbit on the table?
Look, let me put it this way. I'd say what has been worked upon with a lot of effort by the negotiators on both sides, 2 of whom are actually here, we have, from our side, put on the table what we believe is, for us, an unprecedented offer. It is, to the best of my knowledge, the best offer that we have made any country. The point here isn't so much about the dollars and cents value or pounds and pence value of it, but the strategic value of a relationship that we believe is of considerable importance to India. And so
in what sense do you think it would be the best? You said
the best in the sense, look, India has had some free trade agreements, but they've been limited in ambition. What we are trying to do with this free trade agreement is to increase the depth of, or the extent of ambition, including in goods and services, that we'd like to offer to the UK. Now, obviously, I don't for a moment say this in any sense to say that this is the best thing that could ever have been done. But relative to what we have done in the past, this is certainly, by some measure, quite a bit ahead of what we've offered anybody else. Naturally, the UK government and whoever governs the UK after the 4th of July has to choose whether that's adequate or what more they'd like to see. And that's why probably it should take a little while more to try and finalize what
is feasible for both sides to conclude an FTA on. But I believe, per se, this is a good place to be in at this point of time.
Okay, so I was pressing David Lammy a bit on this issue of mobility, visas for students, visas for business travelers. What's at stake here for India? Why is it so important, do you think? Give us the Indian perspective.
Okay, look, let me first say what I've said repeatedly here in the media, including on television and radio and print. Either my English isn't of an adequate standard to make the point, or clearly it's not resonating. Visas are not the first priority for us in an FTA. We are not seeking to be essentially looking at the FTA as a means to bring people to the UK. That is not the objective. What we're looking for, and my colleagues will bear me out, is whatever is reasonable within the broad framework of international trade and services under Mode 4 of GATS to be able to have natural persons travel for intercompany transfers, etc. The UK has a number of companies in India, and we have a very large number of companies here. In fact, over 970 companies in the UK, just as subsidiaries, not even counting joint ventures. There is every reason for companies to want to be able to facilitate easier movement of people. And that's about all we're asking for broadly in the space around visas. Naturally, about students, this is a matter that your situation, your politics, your electorate has to decide whether it's worthwhile to give students who come and study here an opportunity to stay and work. This is the consequence of whatever decision you make will be evaluated by people. I mean, people will vote with their wallets accordingly. Yeah. That is really for you. We're not asking necessarily that you must make this a critical part of an FTA. We understand, however, that there is interest among Indian students who come to pay significant sums of money here for educational opportunities. And in doing so, as is the case in Canada or Australia or the US, they get to work for a bit. They will evaluate it accordingly, the opportunities that they get. And the rest of it is really up to the host country.
Let's move on from that a little to talk a little.
I hope I've made the point.
Loud and clear, right?
Yeah.
I think it is just only one element of many. Really.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's not the primary purpose of a trade.
Of course, completely.
It is, of course, to do more trade together.
Yes.
Yes. So let's talk about other ways in which the UK-India relationship might be deepened. David Lammy mentioned quite a few. I was intrigued by what he was saying about a security relationship going further. How would you see that?
So I think, if I may, I think the Shadow Secretary of State absolutely made an interesting point when he talked about the FTA as not being the ceiling of our ambitions. Why is an FTA important? Obviously, it is important for us to do more business together, to have more trade happen. But the critical piece for me is an FTA creates the habit of much more intense cooperation, which is critical for government-to-government trust to build up. Now, ultimately, partnerships are built on a deepening of trust. And the depth of trust that we seek to create includes defense, it includes security, it includes cooperation between our police services, our security services, and of course our military. We talk about the Indo-Pacific and the connectedness of security challenges worldwide. Well, we live in the Indo-Pacific. For us, it's critical to see that a rules-based order based on international law, with freedom of navigation, with the capacity of all states to be able to contribute to the security of the region. We see that this is an area of importance for most of our European partners, none more so than the UK. And obviously, this is an area for us to work together. So what we're looking at really is working together on security policy, on the hard edges of security itself, which includes military-to-military relations, which includes co-innovation and co-development of military technology products, and indeed, eventually, the capacity for us to have a level of interoperability with each other's militaries. And the navies in particular...
That would be a big step forward, wouldn't it, in the
We're
relationship?
already working quite a bit in that direction.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the kind of relationship that India has with, say, Israel or Russia to have that kind of relationship, the US, to have it with the UK as well. And then a lot of the things that a free trade agreement would permit would be business to business.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that David Lammy said I thought was quite intriguing, which is really about the approach to government, learning from the approach to government and the relationship between citizen and government that has developed in India over the last 10 years, with a digital portal that makes the ease of transfers and registration, etc., so much better. How do you think, is that a model that other countries have looked to learn from? Because it seems like maybe Britain might be open to doing something like that.
Look, it isn't my position to tell other people what they should do. But let me just say in a few short sentences what we've done. Essentially leveraging the digital stack that we have, which starts on the foundational platform of our unique identity project. Today in India, the kind of digital services that are built on top of that are genuinely unprecedented. Take financial services alone. Fintech payments in India, last year alone, there were 117 billion transactions. The next largest number in any other country was around 18 billion. To put that in perspective, we are doing almost as much as the second highest country in 1 month. That country does it in a year, right? It also means a range of disaggregated services can also be provided. It means financial inclusion is increased. It also means, and there's a very interesting conversation I had recently with an Indian business, which is looking at biometric-based banking. Now, let me just tell you why that would be important. In India, in a number of rural areas, it's difficult for people to go out and get money from ATMs. I mean, in other words, you'd have to put billions of ATMs everywhere, right? So how do you actually get cash to people? I believe this is a problem in the UK too, when bank branches are closing out in small towns and villages outside big cities. With the biometric-based system that we have now, people in rural areas or remote areas can actually go to the local provision shop, and the provision shop guy essentially becomes a living ATM. So he or she is able to offer cash against your bank account transfer. And to receive cash in transfers too. In other words, you can bank with your local grocery guy.
Yeah.
And now imagine, this is not something that only works in India.
Of course.
It's not something that works only in developing countries. It works here too.
So we've heard about the big increase in FDI from India to the UK. Are we seeing the opposite happening? For instance, maybe UK diaspora Indians investing in India in these kind of tech options or AI, for instance?
Well, let me just say we could see a bit more. There is certainly space for much more to come in from the UK. Indian businesses, as anybody who lives in London knows, in summer, the place is awash with Indian businessmen coming to the UK because most of them do such a great job in their businesses here. And what's not to like? You actually have a few days of sunshine here. So you know, and we have much hotter sunshine at that point of time in India. So this is a great opportunity.
This is London's heat wave.
Yeah, great. Lucky you. But as far as we're concerned, our interest is in being able to have a lot more coming across from the UK because we believe the Indian market is receptive to the UK. There is less of a learning curve and there is colossal opportunity. So we'd love to see the UK, particularly in finance, fintech, in terms of technology-based innovation. As the Shadow Foreign Secretary was mentioning, he set out a number of very useful areas that we hope to be able to cooperate with the UK in. But also in brick and mortar stuff. There is the build-out of infrastructure in India today is one of the most exciting business opportunities. Literally trillions of dollars worth of contracts available.
High Commissioner, it's been great having you with us at IGF 2024.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So everyone's been talking about technology, right, ladies and gentlemen? Well, we're going to take a big leap into the future and see where AI could take us. What are the risks and what are the opportunities? Let me introduce you now for a power talk to Umang Bedi, who's co-founder of local language technology platform Verse Innovation. How does he see Gen AI shaping the future? Umang.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to just start off with a big thank you to Manoj and the entire IGF team for creating such a vibrant platform for all of us to be here and share the diversity of our perspectives across business, geopolitical, investing, tech. It's a really bohemian and eclectic atmosphere, and I've loved supporting Manoj in this journey over the last 6 years. You know, this whole conversation started a couple of months ago when Manoj gave me a call, and he said two things. He said, why don't you come down and you're seeing the world change with AI and talk to us about how AI is going to disrupt our lives in the next 10 to 15 years. The second thing that he should have told me, but he forgot, was to send me a memo for the dress code, so I apologize for that. But nonetheless, you know, it was very exciting because as entrepreneurs, we're involved in this world and we're seeing it on a day-to-day perspective, but we don't think that far. We think 3 years, we think 5 years, but the moment you go down to the journey of thinking 10 to 15 years, it's a journey of introspection. It's a journey where you look within, you look at signals, you look at patterns, you look at data, and try and correlate that, right? And that's what I'm about to talk to you over the next 10 to 12 minutes. But fundamentally, one thing that I am as an individual is a techno-optimist. And so I think everything that I will share today is going to be driven by entrepreneurs. The finest entrepreneurs in the world are really going to come and disrupt the next layer of technology with AI, right? As we gaze into the future, what the future looks like, I thought I'll spend a minute to tell you how we got here. And that's really delving into the past. You know, when you think about how fast AI is changing or computers is changing, this world was actually built on a framework which was adapted from the US Navy. It's an acronym called OOAD, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. So when you observe something, it's your power of perception, right? When you are oriented to something, it's your cognitive ability to really understand what that piece of information is. When you're deciding, you're really prioritizing in terms of what actions you're going to take. And when you're acting, you're really delivering on that outcome. Now, this was a framework that was used to teach soldiers their decision-making process when on the field. And it was that framework that was adapted to the world of computers really around the last 20 years. And if you think about the last 20 years, computers have gotten really good at the whole perception. They've gotten really good at acting and delivering on, you know, prioritizing those tasks and delivering on it. But up until a year ago, they were really weak on the human cognitive ability, right? And generative AI with OpenAI and now a bunch of other companies that have jumped in has completely transformed that landscape. And it's changing really, really fast, right? In my mind, dynamic algorithms are going to change the history of the world forever. The history of the world is not going to be written by the pen alone. It's going to be written by algorithms that learn, adapt, and evolve over time. Like every day, the space is getting disrupted so fast, it's not even funny. And these algorithms are just going to continuously learn and get better. But there are a lot of risks associated with this as well. So over the next couple of slides, I'm just going to talk to you about how I see the future. But I thought I'll reflect on statements of 4 visionaries on this page. In my mind, AI will be everywhere and will touch everything. I think Sundar said this so beautifully, it will have the most profound impact on humanity, greater than fire, electricity, and the internet. Jensen, of course, who's a net beneficiary of this all, says that it's greater than anything that he's seen in the last 40 years, including the internet. Think about the last mobile disruption that we had, right, was when mobile came out. First it was internet, then mobile. This is unprecedentedly going to be larger, way larger. And I'm going to take a shot at trying to look back and predict. It's, as I said, it's a little bit of an oxymoron, But I truly believe that there would be naysayers in this room who are going to diss everything that I say, right? And that's okay. That's totally cool. But from the pace at which we are seeing things develop, this is going to be a transformative change. And I think it's going to be a privilege just to live through it all and experience it. So the first big prediction from my side is on healthcare. I look at the world where free predictive healthcare would be available, or near free predictive healthcare would be available to everyone. And what I mean by that is, when you just look at the size of the AI healthcare market, it's a $200 billion opportunity in the next 5 years. But today's healthcare is great, but it's really focused around cure. I think the healthcare that we are going to see with AI is really going to focus on prevention, early detection, right? Classifying brain tumors, looking at cardiovascular profiles, looking at early detections of cancer, and it's going to be deeply personalized. And I think it's going to have an accuracy rate which is very, very high. And we're already seeing signs of doctors using this around the world. The second big paradigm shift is going to be education. I think education is a universal basic right. And when I think about education, this is where it gets really cool, right? Some amazing work being done by Khan Academy and Microsoft in this space, but free education or near free education would be available to all children. If you just think about all of us who came out of college, like, I don't think I was really employable for 3 years because my education didn't really solve for the needs of what was needed in business. But here you're going to have deeply personalized learning journeys. You're going to create learners, the next generation of learners, learners who have the ability to gain data-driven insights, interactive simulations, and adapt in that learning process. And this is going to be critical because I truly believe that the global workforce and the entire economy is going to be reimagined. If you think about the industrial era, there was a complete reimagination of jobs, right? And we've all heard this narrative that AI is going to take away jobs. And I think that's true. I will go out on the record and say that's true. It's going to take away mundane, repetitive jobs which are on a shop floor of a factory or on an assembly line in a factory. And I don't even know if you did that job for 30 days, is it really a job or borderline slavery, right? So AI is going to remove the servitude element of it, but I think it's going to drive a generation and a creation of new job opportunities. This is a $4 trillion market in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to create new jobs that's going to be enabled by the education process around delivering lifelong learning and creating those lifelong learners through that personalized experience. One thing that, how many people here code software in this room, right? That's a few, less than 5% of the room. This is the beauty of what AI is going to do. It's going to completely democratize software because you don't need to code at all. You're going to have the ability to sit down over dinner with your loved one, discuss an idea, and by the time you get to that glass of wine, as long as you're good with English prompting or your local language prompting, it's going to generate code for you. It's going to be a time where you don't need to work for the computer is going to work for you, right? And that's pretty cool because it completely democratizes innovation. It actually helps give it a fuel to a fire, right? One such example is around autonomous transportation. Now, this is at 3 layers. The first layer is, hey, we're already seeing driverless cars in China and different parts of the world being used by various ride-sharing apps or ride-hailing apps, sorry, right? This is going to transcend, and it's going to transcend to air travel. Imagine air travel at 4,000 miles an hour, right? Getting from London to New York for lunch, when you fly in the morning. And that's going to become a reality. And the interesting part about this is when you think about at a 3rd layer, it's going to impact the entire public transportation system, right? But it's going to be powered, in my mind, with fusion as energy. It's not going to be powered by gas or by coal because that's not sustainable. And as long as we can change those turbines, this is absolutely possible. And I think this is going to really transform over the next few years. One big onus on all of us is, have we left the planet a better place? and we all know that we are guilty as charged, right? But when you think about various carbon initiatives, zero carbon initiatives are already underway with AI. What excites me with AI is the ability that it can drive to build sustainable solutions that can drive sustainable development. Just think about it. Efficiency in our recycling process or automation of just waste sorting. That's possible today, right? Optimizing energy consumption, right? When we walk out of a room or we walk into a room, just depending upon the amount of sunlight that it has. And precision-driven agriculture. When I look at what's happening in this space, we've all failed at zero carbon emissions. We've all failed at carbon credits. The only way to solve this is using intelligence and data. And I think this is going to be a big impact. There's going to be some very interesting enhancement in human collaboration, right? Now, one enhancement that we're seeing is creative professionals going, having a ball, because with the new kind of algorithms that are learning and evolving every day, it's going to free them up to just focus on the creative process and not the output. The output will be taken care of, whether it's video or a full-length feature film. But even on mundane tasks, right? We've seen Optimus now reach its second generation. There's an amazing company in Bangalore that's doing some amazing work on humanoids. And I believe there will be millions of such humanoids to help us with our mundane jobs. And these are actually working prototypes that today work, right? With a fair degree of intelligence. And I think it's just going to enhance the human-led AI collaboration process. The one piece that I'm really excited about, if I told you that mobile phones are going to die, like, you wouldn't believe me, right? But just think, how many of you use an Apple phone here in the room? I would assume it's more than 3/4 of the room. How many of you have an average screen time between 6 to 14 hours a day? Be honest, that's the whole room, right? We're always on our screens. The mobile governs us. It governs our relationships, or really, in another way, saddens it, right? The way we access the internet is going to change forever. Agents are going to access the internet for us. Billions of agents are going to work for us and literally do tasks. Now, whether those are chatbots, whether they are different forms, they're also going to be able to translate language for us. And I think that's really going to foster global collaboration, communication, and cultural exchange, right? Now, this is a very, very tricky area around governance. I would argue, and I've worked for several companies, including Meta, that Capitol Hill completely failed at governing social media. We all know that, right? And chances are they'll fail again. I would actually argue that the laws in India, UK, even Europe with GDPR are far stricter and hold a lot more accountability to these platforms. So who's going to govern AI? If it's evolving and constantly changing, who's going to do that? And I think the answer is from AI itself. I'm not saying that AI will make the laws at all. That's not what I'm suggesting. I think there are enough intelligent people that are getting a part of government who understand that this is a dynamic space. But it's going to be driven by data and insights, whether it's from health systems, food systems, transport systems, security systems, threat surveillance systems. That data is going to inform forming the right governance framework. And I'm an optimist in this area, as I said in the beginning, but I think this has to happen. Whether it moves to universal basic income for the first couple of years, before there is a creation of a thriving new job environment, I think that governance mechanism is going to be well-informed with data, and that's pretty interesting. And I also think there's going to be trust and transparency. You heard the minister the shadow minister just talk about deep fakes and fake news and the impact on elections. But I think all of this, whether it's OpenAI, whether it's Google, whether it's Meta or any platform, there are new standards like the C2PA being, getting into place, which are going to get far and far more robust. That's going to give you a very clear view into what kind of content is coming from where. It's going to promote trust, fairness, and transparency. And finally, AI is going to transform our lives, how we live, how we shop, how we get entertained, right? And that's pretty cool because it's just going to help us now, whether it's with bots, with companions, with digital assistants, with whatever the framework, but you're going to see this completely change over the next 10 years for us to lead far more enduring lives, right? So in summary, it's medicine, education, jobs, code writing, autonomous transport, sustainable development and impact on the planet, enhanced human-AI collaboration, AI and how we communicate, AI and governance, and of course, ethics and transparency in being that partner. History, they say, is a bad motorist. It rarely ever signals its true motive and intent. In my mind, history is turning a page. I am truly energized and excited to be welcoming you and being a part of this journey with you into this dynamic, new, pulsating world that's emerging. And I think the onus is on to us to leave the planet, the world, enjoy this journey, but leave it as a better place for our loved ones and the next future generation of learners and leaders that emerge. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. You are fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Love to see you. Thank you. Fascinating insight. I'm going to talk so much more throughout the week about AI and whether it is a tool or a threat and how it may be used in business. It will also come up in our next panel too. And as you know, what we are doing today and across the week is a schedule that is designed to give us insights and tools into how we prepare for what comes next in business, tech, arts, culture. So we're going to look first of all at the economic outlook. Thank you. We'll look at the economic outlook as well. What do the next 10 years look like for global business? What role will India play as a global economic powerhouse? Will other emerging markets drive global growth too? We're going to assess exactly what could happen next in our panel with our experts in just a moment. But first, to set the scene and to discuss where we are right now, I'd be delighted to welcome Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, who's the Executive Chair at Biocon. So nice to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Well, it's absolutely a delight to be here. I mean, I'm in London for IGF for the first time, so it's really, really great to be here.
Delighted to see you. And we have a few minutes before I invite our other panelists to join us. And I'm going to use that opportunity for you to hopefully set the scene a little bit, because it strikes me if we look at the global economy right now, elections, inflation, wars, cost of living crisis, AI, supply chain disruption, labor shortages, the list really does go on. And I wonder, first of all, how you would characterize where we are in the global economy right now. What does business look like at the moment?
So you very rightly said that, we are seeing this very complex, macroeconomics play out, a very complex geopolitical scenario playing out. And in all this, we are seeing some shifts in the way economies are developing and growing. So you have seen a huge disruption of global supply chains during COVID, and we've never really recovered from that. Secondly, I think we've also had these knee-jerk reactions to these disruptions by shifting this whole policy or strategy of globalization to localization. And I'm not so sure that's a good idea at all. Because what globalization did deliver to the world was economies of scale, affordability and accessibility to goods and services. And I think it served the world in a very positive way. Localization is going to be more expensive. It's not going to be cost effective in my view. And I think we need to re-look at what we're doing in terms of these global supply chains and the way we want to go about it. And again, in all this, I think we are seeing that the geopolitics are making it even more complex, whether it's supply chains that pertain to energy, food, healthcare, or even just financial movements. I think you're seeing these play out in a very, very complex way.
And as a business, trying to navigate so many different headwinds right now, I know this will ultimately depend on what your business is, but how do you prioritize what is the biggest concern?
So first and foremost, I think everyone's looking, as a business, I think everyone's looking at where are the big market opportunities and how easy is it to access those markets. So I think regulations do play a very, very important role in taking those kind of decisions. I think to me in the context of IGF, I think India is a very attractive and inviting marketplace for every business in the world. Equally, I think India is in a very favorable position when it comes to tech talent. You just heard a wonderful presentation on AI. And India today has 22 million, chip and AI chip developers in the world. So I think we are supporting this very exciting new sector in a massive way.
Are you optimistic? You talk about India being such an opportunity. Are you optimistic that the barriers to entry to some key markets in India are now coming down?
I think so, because I think India is very clear that it has to be a part of the global economy and it has to steer the global economy. So it works both ways. And I think you just heard, Sanjeev Sanyal talk about how many legislations and regulations have been done away with. And I think there's a lot more to be done. But equally, I think you have to look at it as a strategic opportunity for both the UK and India to see what are those critical areas. We all talk about critical technologies being a very interesting and compelling fact to start on. And I think that's where we need to focus on. AI, robotics, and of course, quantum. These are important emerging high-tech areas where both countries can really partner in a big way. And then, of course, comes the other areas of healthcare, where India is one of the largest vaccine producers, producer of generic drugs. And I think that's where, again, every economy that's trying to contain its healthcare costs looks at these kind of opportunities of affordable, access and affordability and development to really bring down those costs. And I think India is a great partner to every country in the world to do that.
It's too easy, isn't it, as well, for us to focus on some of the difficulties of this last few years. But we are looking in the rearview mirror. We hope that those things have now passed. And before I invite the rest of the panel to join us, just a final thought from you for this section on what are you most optimistic about right now? Where is the optimism coming in the global economy?
I think the global economy is in that reset stage. And the reset stage is really about an AI-driven world where there are limitless possibilities. And I think that's what we're all looking at, saying how do we look at those possibilities, how do we hone in on some of those possibilities, and how do we invest in those possibilities to deliver on those opportunities.
Stay with us. Can I invite our other panelists to join us at this stage? Ray Newton-Smith, who's the Chief Executive of the Confederation of British Industry. Please make your way up here. Lavanya Chandrasekhar, who's the CFO at Diageo, and Nicola Hodson, the Chief Executive of IBM UK and Ireland. Welcome to you. Please grab a seat. Welcome. I feel very outnumbered on this panel, and I'm delighted to be. Welcome to you all. Thank you for being here. Rain, let me start with you, because I want to just kickstart all the conversations that we will have over this week with some of the optimism and some of the opportunities that are out there. Where do you see the opportunities right now?
Well, I mean, we've just heard some amazing examples of those already, but I think one of the areas I'd really pick up on that speaks, I think, both to the UK, but also India's capability is thinking about trade and services. When we think about trade across borders, we so often think about goods moving across borders, and of course that's part of it, but if you think about cloud computing, if you think about our universities, if you think about creative industries, if you think about financial services, so much is provided through the way people can trade some of these things across borders and of course you can do that without having to travel now in the way that digital capabilities are so increasing. So for me, that is where over the next decade, I think we'll see so much growth and opportunity.
That's the dream, isn't it? But actually, when we talk about that sort of stuff as well, we see barriers go up. Much as globalization broke down so many of those barriers, protectionism is alive and well. Look at what's happening in the United States. Look at what's happening in China. Look at what's happening here in the UK. How do we get beyond that?
Well, I think, and that's just where the sort of the threat and the opportunity is. And I think it speaks to why we as business leaders and politicians on all sides have to speak up for free and fair trade, and both what it has done for lifted generations out of poverty, and also just with the opportunity it can to really make the most of some of the technological advances that we just heard about. You know, I think if we sit in our countries and allow those barriers to come up, then we're not making the most of what our human capability is. So I do think that's why these sort of events and what we can do to make it easy for ideas to flow across borders, for people to learn from education, you know, whether that's universities in India or also here in the UK, we've seen how much that has helped the UK to innovate and beyond.
Lavanya, welcome. Nice to see you. We spoke there with Karan about the opportunities of India, and talk to me about how you see India within the business.
Well, you know, Diageo is a big company with 200 brands. We work in 180 different countries. And yet with the big presence that we have in Scotch, in vodka, in rum, in gin, and tequila, I can go on, we're only a 4.6% market share of total beverage alcohol. And so 2 years ago, we set ourselves a target of going from 4% market share of total beverage alcohol in 2020 to 6% in 2030. And as we think about that opportunity, I mean, like, there's opportunity everywhere. There's a growing middle class consumer population everywhere. But India particularly stands out in that respect. You know, there are going to be 600 million consumers coming of legal drinking age in the next 10 years. And a quarter of them are going to be in India. And this is an increasingly affluent consumer base. And so we think that there is huge opportunity for us to grow our business in the market. And what's fascinating about India is that it's a whiskey market. You know?
I talked in the introduction about some of the headwinds that we've faced, and I do want to focus on the opportunities. But do you, of course you do, but how much attention do you pay to the geopolitical issues around the world, and what bearing do they have on how you will execute business?
It has a huge impact on our business. I mean, we're a business where, you know, our products come from a particular part of the world. Provenance is very important. You can't make Scotch outside Scotland. So much as the Indian consumer loves Scotch, it has to be transported out of Scotland into India. You can't make tequila out of in anywhere other than 4 provinces in Mexico. And so we rely on free trade. We rely on a world of, you know, geopolitical harmony for our business to thrive. And so that is extraordinarily important for us.
Nicola, hi, nice to see you. 2 words I've heard a lot already, and we're only, you know, halfway through day 1, AI and quantum. This is where you come in, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the revolutionary power of AI. And I don't mean just from a consumer point of view, because we already get a sense of how we as consumers may use it. What does it mean for business right now?
Yeah, look, you heard some figures just now, but I have one from PwC that says by 2030, AI will add $16 trillion to the global economy. That's bigger than the economy today of India and China put together. So it's huge. It's very, very significant. Of that 16 trillion, 7 will come from productivity savings, and 9 will come from side effects of consumerism on top of that. So super exciting. When you think about businesses, only 1% of business data is in any kind of AI model at the moment. So we have a long way to go, but some really exciting things going on. Last week, NatWest, one of Britain's biggest banks, announced Cora Plus, a chatbot, Gen AI enabled. We did some work with one of the NHS trusts in the UK. They've managed to save to deliver 700 extra hours with patients every single week. It's a 4-week project. It's a super small application, of AI. We just launched a B2B marketing platform with WPP, Gen AI enabled. So you start to see a move from hype into production in business, but still a long way to go.
Yeah, we're speaking to NatWest actually later in the week about their applications of it and what that will mean. And I wonder, first of all, though, as well, it's so easy for us just to talk about AI as a tool. It is a threat as well, and I wonder where we strike the right balance between regulation and innovation, because there's a danger that if we err too much on the regulation side, we stifle innovation, and yet at the same time we're aware we can't let the power of AI fall into the hands of a few.
Yeah, the UK regulation actually is going about it, we think, in a really pragmatic way. So they're taking regulators with domain expertise, so financial services, for example, and asking those regulators to look after the use of AI. So if you regulate the use cases of AI rather than trying to license or regulate the technology itself, then we think that's going to be much faster, allow companies to innovate. Obviously, all needs to be done safely, responsibly, and without bias. And that's the responsibility of those who develop AI from the get-go, all the way through to those who innovate with AI in the use cases. So having that regulation all the way through the value chain, super important.
And Karan, I'm interested in all of this. Everything we've talked about so far is about how it breaks down barriers. It's cross-border, and actually, the businesses still need to think about their business in a very different way. That this isn't about individual markets anymore. It's not even about continents. It's about a global opportunity when it comes to business and how they operate cross borders. These borders that are essentially redundant when it comes to the way we will do business in future.
Yeah, I think you just heard some of the predictions of what AI will do for our businesses in the future. And I do think it's going to be a borderless world. And I think we all need to really know how to really work and do our businesses in that borderless world. And so technology is going to drive our future, and companies are investing hugely in quickly coming to speed with all that technology is throwing at them. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting time for all of us, and we have to keep pace with what's happening. And to answer your question, I think regulations will have to evolve and keep pace with technology. I don't think you should start blocking technologies ahead of time. I think that's the way the world is moving. And I'm very excited with what's happening in India. India has one of the largest digital public infrastructure created, largely because we were so tech-driven and tech-focused. I mean, it's even said that because of our demographics, India is going to be supplying 25% of tech talent to the world by 2050. So I think everything is moving in the right way, but it's a technology-driven world for sure.
And Rain, give me a sense of how ethics come into all of this, because from a business point of view, we've established the way that business should and could operate. The technology changes this, and I think there's two very key things on that: the ethics around the use of that technology, but also the tech divide of the haves and the have-nots, and how we make that equitable access. How do your members, and certainly how are businesses approaching that challenge?
Well, I think there's sort of two elements to it. And one is, as Nicola was saying, is thinking about what does global regulation look like, and how do we make sure that we are working with partners across the world to have that proportionate regulation. And actually the UK has, with the Bletchley Summit and Declaration, has helped to sort of bring regulators across borders, because as we know, this technology is not domain specific, doesn't stay in one country. So I think having that international effort is really important. And I think the UK has led the way in some of that effort. And I think many businesses recognize that. I think then the other element is thinking about, as we're developing, as you say, thinking about what does good access look like, and how do we use it to not make inequality within our society worse, but actually use it to provide access to services. And I think we had a great example in the talk just before that a lot of our businesses talked to, about the ability to access healthcare, the ability to access legal services, the ability to almost have the democratization of some of those services. So I think if we have the right regulation in place, then we'll almost see that happen as we see the diffusion of the technology and more businesses. But it all has to come from a plan for sustainable growth within individual countries.
The time is tight. So Lavanya and Nicola, a final thought from the pair of you, please, if I can, on skills, about what you need right now, because every business that I talk to says they are struggling to get the people that they need. Two very different businesses, but I assume facing similar challenges in getting the people you need. Where is the greatest shortfall right now?
Well, I think, look, the problems are well understood. I think it's a question of what can companies do to distinguish themselves and be able to get after that very short resource pool that's there. And increasingly we find that what employees are looking for in terms of a fulfilling career, they need to work in a diverse environment, the attractiveness of some of the benefits that companies can provide. For example, one of the things that we do in Diageo is we give everybody in the company who is having a child, whichever way they choose to have a child, 6 months of paid parental leave, men or women. These are some of the things that companies can do to attract that small resource pool. And the second thing is, how do you upskill people within the company? And we talked about AI, we talked about regulation. One of the things that we're increasingly beginning to realize is that each individual person needs to understand the responsibility that they play in a digital world and self-regulate almost.
Nicola, do you have the people you need, and where are they coming from?
Yeah, look, if I speak on an industry perspective, I really like your point about India exporting skills. Last year alone, there were 2 million tech jobs in the UK not filled. So the demand is huge, not just to invent and develop the technology, but to drive adoption of it. So we absolutely need more skills. It's the responsibility of governments, companies, NGOs, all to work together to drive that. And then our responsibility, each of us, to figure out how do we work alongside AI without being fearful of it and upskill ourselves accordingly. We've got an ambition to skill 30 million people globally by 2030, 2 million of them in the next 2 years in AI alone. Other tech companies have similar initiatives. So there's a lot going on, but there's an awful lot to do.
I could talk all day with you about this. Our time is up, I'm afraid, but it's been a joy to talk to you all. Thank you so much. Karan, Rain, Nicola, and Lavanya, thank you.
Thank you.
Nicola, just 1 second. Do a little picture. Thank you so much. And as I said, delighted to be outnumbered on this panel.
So cool, huh? To see Ben with 4 women talking about Indian business and global business.
This sets you up beautifully for your next panel.
I know.
So I'll let you take it away, Nisha. Thank you.
And a lovely transition, because that's what we're going to talk about in our next conversation, about the role of women taking the stage in India. And who better to discuss this with than the former Minister for Women and Child Development, the legendary Smriti Irani. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I must tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real flying visit for her. She is on her way to the airport straight from here. So we appreciate that you come and sit here right next to you. So politics is such a roller coaster, isn't it? And I'm so sorry that things didn't quite work out this time.
Oh, they worked out.
Oh.
I have a prime minister in office.
That's very true. That's very true. Now, on Results Day, on the 4th of June, but 3 weeks ago, you posted on social media, how's the Josh?
Yes.
Meaning, how are you feeling? How are the spirits? It's still high, sir. So lovely and really elegant thing to put on. May I ask you then 3 weeks later, Smriti Irani, how's the Josh?
Higher. I mean, I'm in London. The sun is out. The sky is blue, and that's a non-English weather for you. So
this is our heat wave, as I've already said once today. Yeah, it's great to have you with us. So you've been 10 years a minister, got to the top of politics, really. In the last 5 years, responsible for this very important Ministry of Women and Child Welfare. When you look back on it, what do you think were your main achievements, and where would you have liked to have made more progress?
Well, I think that I won't be myopic enough to look at my career from a perspective of just 5 years. I'm 48. I became a minister when I was 38. When I became a minister, I was already MP twice over. I'd served 2 terms in the upper house of Parliament in India. The fact that in 2019, when I came to office as the Minister of Women and Child Development, I had defeated for the first time in the history of Indian politics the sitting president of the Indian National Congress. That is a history that nobody could repeat in India. The fact that...
Yeah, it was quite an upset, wasn't it?
The fact that I was privileged enough to be a part of politics for over 2 decades. I fought my first election for Lok Sabha when I was 27 years old.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Before that, I was
even while you were an actress and, you know, having a big TV career,
yes.
you were still involved in
So I have not
politics.
only acted in television, I have produced shows, I have directed some, I have written a lot. And
you were
I've
engaged
also
in
had 2
politics
babies
along the way?
and done politics, so I've had my hands full. But if I am to look at the last decade as an administrator, as the Minister of Education, my first term, I had the privilege of writing the base document of what is now known as the National Education Policy, which came to the fore after 3 decades of no policy being presented at the national level. I had the privilege of creating the first ranking methodology for India for higher education. I created the first ever MOOCs platform for India called Swayam. We have close to 20 million children now studying on it. Helped digitize all the curriculum from school onwards to higher studies in India. I served as the textiles minister in India when we were confronted with COVID, as was the rest of the world. And mind you, we had never produced a single PPE suit in our country, in the history of our country. So when there was a global lockdown, in March, the WHO standards came to the fore. We created close to 110 opportunities, thereby giving rise to 1,000 companies in India. In April, we had no company in India that was indigenously manufacturing PPE suits. By June, we became the 2nd largest exporters in the world. And without a single rupee of subsidy from the government, we could bring together the best of minds in industry and policy making. So if I'm looking at feathers in my cap, I would think that serving your country when your back is to the wall is a great opportunity as a young politician. And
creating a whole industry, as you were saying,
yes,
in the face of adversity.
Without it being in face of adversity and without it being a burden on the Treasury, I think that is something that I'm extremely proud of.
Tell me a bit more about promoting women's political leadership in India. We've seen it happening at every level now, from panchayat level, village level, all the way up to the Lok Sabha, the lower house of parliament. And I think there's a bill that with reserving rights. What will it deliver? What do you hope this will deliver?
We have close to 1.5 million women who are elected to political office at the grassroots in the panchayats. And close to 2.5 million women fight for those seats. So we have an active political ecosystem of female leadership in our country.
And how do you think it makes a difference bringing women into the heart of politics and administration and decision making?
There has been research which has validated that when women are in positions of authority, the spend on issues of education, health, infrastructure for communities, that spend goes higher as compared to men who sit in office. But what has been fascinating about my political journey is that I've had a 2-decade-old, I think, contribution or struggle to see women's reservation bill come and get passed in both houses of parliament. What was fantastic is when the Prime Minister proposed it and we had it passed in both houses of parliament. So in the next 5 years in my country, we will see that get activated politically.
Yep.
So it's a new opportunity for women in politics, especially young women or women who have struggled over a number of years to contribute politically to the country. So we are living in exciting times.
So you've been talking about getting women involved in politics and public leadership.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on female participation in the general labor workforce? We've seen a booming economy. Do you think we have enough women actually taking part in the general labor workforce?
Well, out of the 400 million women who are of the working age in India, 343 million women are in the unorganized sector. However, the government has proposed insurance and pension schemes which are affordable. And we have seen an enrollment of close to 130 million women in those insurance schemes and pension schemes, so that the challenges of an informal workforce can be met by social security protection by the government. What is interesting is that our labor force participation has gone up to 37%. But when you look at women as CEOs in India, we have 8% women CEOs in India, which is better than the global average of 6% and the Asian average. But we know that we still want to traverse new paths. What is also fascinating is that it is mandated by law that if you have a listed company, you have to have women on the board. And of all the women who are on boards in various companies across India, women who serve on more than one board, that number is up by 22% as compared to men, which is at 12.8%. So I think that when we find competent women, even in the corporate sector, they tend to get more opportunities. I celebrate additionally what has been, I think, instrumental in driving social and financial change in my country. The fact that 250 million women have a bank account, and banks now, after much deliberation and access to all the data that they have gathered through these accounts, have come to the conclusion that the female bank account has a lifetime revenue of 12% more than men. And 300 million women received bank loans for small businesses, SMEs. What is again fascinating is the NPA on such accounts is less than 2.5%.
Wow.
So we've made a global cause and case for investments in women-owned businesses.
Smriti, before I let you go to catch your flight, may I ask you a couple of a bit more personal questions?
Shoot.
So you personally have had to suffer some really pretty pitiful and terrible abuse online, really ugly stuff, media. How do you deal with that personally? How do you cope with it?
Well, I think I'd read a very interesting quote once, that if you're a woman, you need to behave like a lady, look like a girl, work like a horse, and think like a man. Now, I can't possibly look like a girl. I try to behave like a lady. But when you work like a horse, you do tend to kick around a bit. When you think like a man, you do tend to be assertive. And when you're assertive, it's a very fine line between a gentleman being assertive. He's known of robust nature. And when a woman is assertive, she tampers with possibly being anointed as arrogant. But I still would say to women across the globe,
or worse, huh? Or worse.
Maybe. But that is something that you live with if you want to succeed. So kick away if you're a woman. Think on your feet, and you'll land on better prospects.
So where are you going to be landing then, Smriti Iran? You've
Delhi,
done so
if I
much.
can catch that flight.
Are we allowed one last question? Can I put one last question?
Well,
where are you
Delhi,
going? What's the next chapter going to be?
Oh, the chapter was already written on the 4th of June. My political destiny is obviously going to be written by my organization. But I came into politics 2.5 decades ago because I wanted to bring change in the lives of people who are not possibly celebrated or looked at in the normal course of Indian politics. I'm happy to share that we have something called the Confederation of Small Traders in my country, which has a membership of close to 80 million small businesses. I've just taken on yesterday the role of their advisor.
Okay.
Yeah. And on the condition that I get to mentor women-owned businesses.
Fabulous.
And my intention is...
You might have a lineup starting right here.
Like I said, we've just made a case for why women are great investments, societally and financially. So my ambition is to have 100,000 businesses owned by women at the forefront in the next 5 years. And
let's pin her to that ambition, yes? Let's see if she can beat that ambition.
So who knows? in the next IGF, we may have at least 10 of them standing on this forum, being celebrated
Oh,
by Nisha Pillai.
you're always welcome. Thank you so much
for
for
the
joining us. Yes. Oh, sorry. We are.
Thank you both. So wonderful to see you. Thank you. Now, if you were with us at IGF in Mumbai earlier this year, you will know we had a wonderful session. It was a conversation. It was pretty varied. I don't think there's any topic that we didn't cover. I'm delighted to say that our next two guests are back with us. That tells you what we will discuss. We will pick up where we left that conversation. There is never enough time in some of these things. We're also going to launch a very special new award to help nurture new talent in literature. I'll tell you more about that award in a moment, but to help me assess the changing face of modern storytelling and how to tread the line between commercial success and critical acclaim, please welcome the best-selling authors Jeffrey Archer and Amish Tripathi. Welcome.
Hello.
Nice to see you in person
Good
this
to
time
see you.
as well.
Can
Please
we have
take a
those
seat,
lights on?
Amish. Yeah.
I like to see the audience. Can we turn these lights out?
That might be a problem for your team.
I like to see
yeah.
the audience.
Yeah.
You're still here, are you?
I'm still here. You don't get rid of me there.
Ah, there they are. Good
Good-looking
afternoon.
room.
Coley was out for a duck this afternoon. And worse still, worse news, my next appointment is with the Australians at 7 o'clock. It's you followed by the Australians.
Grab a seat, if you would
I'm
like.
not sitting.
You can
I'm
stand if you like. Entirely up to you.
I'm 84 years old. I don't sit.
I'll lean then.
We'll get on with it then.
I'm going to start with the question that I posed in the introduction. Critical acclaim, commercial success. Where do you stand?
Well, what you're asking really is about storytelling as opposed to being a literary writer. Being a literary writer is usually based on a first-class education. You're well-read. You've read the classics, so you know what to expect. But we all know very great writers who can't tell a story. They can't do a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when people come to see me from all over the world, and I'm very touched that they do, often they're damn good writers, and they are well educated. But I'm afraid I say to them, go to the ballet. And they say, what are you talking about, Jeffrey? I say, go to the ballet. Look at the prima ballerina. Imagine how many hours she's spent wanting to be the prima ballerina. And then look at the girls behind on the stage and imagine how long they've spent just getting on the stage. And then think of the thousands of young girls who don't even get onto the stage. But what divides, I once asked the ballet dancer, what divides the prima ballerina from the ones standing behind her? And her teacher said, a God-given talent. That's the difference. So I think the answer to your question is you can't teach someone to tell a story. You can teach them to be good writers.
I'm going to come on to that, and that ties in very neatly to our award that we'll talk about in just a moment. Where do you sit on that divide? Because does critical acclaim always translate to commercial success, and vice versa? Can you be commercially successful and the critics actually like what you've done?
The best way to answer this is the Sanskrit word for a classic. It actually is Kal Jai. If you break down that word, Kal is time, Jai is that which defeats time. Right? So that's a perspective in the Indian way. The true judge of a book is time. If it survives 100 years later, it's a good book. Right? But in those traditions, I agree with Jeffrey that essentially It's storytelling which gets the readers to give you that which is most precious, which is not their money. It's actually their time and attention, right? And we were just talking about how a story flows, you know, and we've met very often, we've asked about how the process is. And it was surprising how similar it was, because even for him, it doesn't often come as words. And even for me, the story doesn't come as words. I kind of see it, and I record what I see. And there's no explanation for it. It's just a gift. It's a blessing, right? And that, to me, is as critical as how you say the story. So how I would describe it is, the story is what you're going to say. Writing skills is how you say it. The story is as important, frankly, far more important than how you say it. A good story, well told, is the perfect combination. But if there's a choice between really fantastic prose, but a story that's going nowhere, or a damn good story, but not written that well, probably the other one's better.
Jeffrey, when we spoke last time, I put it to you about whether you have to write what you know. And
I'm deaf.
I put it to you about whether you have to write what you know. And is that true still?
Well, I think it's a great advantage to write about what you know about. So I love politics, I love art, I love cricket, I love all sorts of strange things, and they should get into the books. So if you're thinking about writing a book, write about what you know about, and the public will know that you know and enjoy it. I always give the example of Jane Austen. She wrote about a book about 4 young women who were looking for a husband, and you had to turn the page. She found that was a success. So she wrote a book about 3 young women who were looking for a husband, and that was a success. So she wrote a book about 2 young women who were looking for a husband, and that was a success. And then she wrote Emma. Why did people go on buying the books? Because she was a brilliant storyteller, and you had to turn the page. So, and what did she write about, to answer your question? She lived in a small village in England, and she wrote about the fact that she had sisters and friends who couldn't find a husband. And the whole world read the books, and they still do. So write about what you know about. I once had a lady came to see me. She said, "Oh, it's not fair, Jeffrey. You know prime ministers, you know kings, you know everybody. Of course you can write books. I don't know anybody." And I said, "Well, what do you do?" And she said, "I'm a hairdresser." I said, "You'll get more stories in a hairdresser's shop than I will ever get in my life." So I come back to the point, write about what you know about and your own experiences.
Yeah. Agreed.
Amish, the reason I ask is because, you know, we're here at IGF, and there is a danger that in a lot of Indian literature, it writes one story, doesn't it? The narrative of India is always the same. It's about poverty and it's about overcoming the odds. Why has literature, certainly that writes about India, not progressed since that picture of the 50s, the 60s, the 70s? Why is there still that single narrative?
I realize actually there are 2 sorts of books, okay, about India. One is what the Westerners think Indians read, which is actually, you know, oh, we are all drowning in poverty, it's such a terrible place, etc. And you actually see the Indian bestseller lists or the books that Indians actually read. These 2 worlds are completely poles apart. And Jeffrey Archer is actually read by Indian readers. But most of the books that Westerners think that Indians read, most Indians haven't even heard of, right? And so most Indian books will go into things that we are passionate about. So there'll be great love stories. There'll be stories based on our legends, on the stories of Lord Shiva, of Lord Ram. We are the only pre-Bronze Age culture that is still alive. Our storytelling traditions go so far back. Imagine the worshippers of Apollo and Zeus still being alive. And Apollo and Zeus were young gods by the Indian way, right? So it's ancient storytelling traditions which keep getting adapted again and again. That's what Indians actually read. Most Westerners haven't heard of those books.
So why is there such a disconnect then between what foreigners will read about India and what Indians are reading in India? Why do the two not converge?
I think it's about the lens here. Have you noticed the way the entire, it's not just India, the way most of the global south is seen is the Westerners seeing what they want to see. And I'm not deriding it, it's the way the world has been for the last 2-3 centuries. Okay? And when I've seen it even in OTT platforms, when they want to see authenticity, they want to see authenticity that fits into their lens, into their biases. They don't want to see the actual authenticity. Because if you want to see what a culture actually reads by itself, go to their own bestseller list. Don't read what you think that they are reading. And this is true of movies and apologies for that, whatever. But it's not just, it's about movies, it's about everything, right? And what's happening now is that the lens is shifting a bit. As India gains more power, more visibility, the West is finally beginning to see how the Indians see themselves. So when I tell most Westerners that Indians don't see ourselves as a rising nation, we were a once great nation which is rising once again. And that's the way we see ourselves. We're the most ancient culture that is still alive. And this is going to be an interesting decade or two where actually maybe the conversations will start matching. We were talking past each other. We weren't actually talking to each other till now.
And this is where, again, the award will come in, and we'll talk about that in a second. Jeffrey, I'm interested in, and you've been doing this quite a while.
Do you want to sit?
Yeah, you go there.
You've been in this business quite a while.
41 years.
Yeah.
41 books, 50 years. Yeah.
50 years.
Yeah.
I'm 50 years old, man.
You're pathetic. Get back.
How do you get stories out? How does a young, new author who might have the best skills, the most great storytelling, the most wonderful stories, how does that story travel, and how has that changed in your career?
That's a trickier question, because if you want to be a storyteller, you must be observant. You must be watching and looking all the time. Whenever I'm in a restaurant, I notice that I tell who's ever at the table, who's sitting at another table, what they're doing. There's a love affair going on over there. There's a row going on over there. There's a father who's cross with his son. I watch it the whole time. I'm observing the whole time. I'm watching people the whole time. So you must be an observer. But your other question is trickier. You could be a great storyteller and not be able to write. You may be totally uneducated. In Ireland, they call you a shanachie. And a shanachie is someone, because we know about the Irish, is someone who can tell a story. But a shanachie can't necessarily even write their own name, but they have the gift to tell a story. Now, I'm not going to kid you about this, just in case there's a couple of layabouts out there who are thinking about writing. Listen carefully. Are you paying attention? I get up at 5:30. I write from 6 to 8, from 10 to 12, from 2 to 4, from 6 to 8. I go to bed at 9:30, 10. I get up at 5:30 the next morning. That's day one. On a first draft, I do 45 to 50 days, 300 hours. And the book that has just come out was the 14th draft.
Whoa.
I wish it was easier. You would think after 41 books and 325 million sales, it would get easier. It doesn't. You have to work just as hard. I give you, having dared to mention him, do you think Kohli doesn't train in the nets every day? Do you think he isn't working every day when you're not looking? You think he got to be the greatest batsman in the world on sheer talent? No. You need the combination of damned hard work and talent. I say when addressing schools, so listen carefully, the younger among you. May not be too late for the older among you. Talent plus energy, you'll be a king. Energy and no talent, you'll be a prince. Talent and no energy, you'll be a pauper.
Agreed.
Amish, let me ask you this then too, because when we talk about the prize in a sec, there's a challenge about whether you should be fully self-promoting, promote your own work.
No, they want to stay for another hour. You want to stay for another hour, don't you?
Or do you let the work speak for itself? And how you...
What was the question?
No.
I was asking Amish, but whether you should
or
self-promote or whether you should let the work speak for itself.
Yeah, so, yeah, no, man. I mean, nothing markets itself, not in today's world. So when you're writing, you shouldn't care a damn about the readers, about the publishers, about anyone. When you're writing, write for yourself and make sure it comes out the way you want it to. But once you're done with that, then you have to be a practical marketer. Nothing sells by itself. I can give you a long list of books which should have been bestsellers, but they weren't because they weren't marketed properly.
Things like social media has changed the game, hasn't it?
It was true earlier as well. Very few things get discovered just by themselves. So the best way to see it is, there's this example that my professor at IIM Calcutta had taught me, a marketing professor, that products and marketing are two partners. You need to push them both together. You know an aircraft carrier, India has some, you guys have some as well. The plane, has to be a good product. It has to be capable of flying. But the aircraft carrier, no matter how big it is not long enough for a plane to get enough propulsion.
Yeah.
So there's usually a steam propeller which propels the aircraft forward. The product, the book, is the aircraft.
Yep.
Right? You need a damn good product which can take off. But no matter how good an aircraft you have, it could be an F-Raptor for all you care. If the steam propeller isn't working, it'll fall into the sea. The steam propeller is marketing. Right? Marketing drives trials. It drives the first read. But if the product itself is not good, it'll die quickly after the first read. Yep. You need both. You need a good book. You need good marketing.
See, ladies and gentlemen, good storytelling.
Well, wait a moment. Charles Dickens used to travel around to every single town, stand on a speech. He was a great show-off, just like me. He loved performing, just like me. He used to go around the towns reading his books and performing. And I'll tell you today, because you put it into one of your questions, it's harder today than it's ever been. Charles Dickens had no radio, no television, no films, no Taylor, Swiftie, to take away people watching you. He was out there on his own virtually. Can you hear me, Swiftie? You're getting more publicity than me.
I'm going to invite Manoj to come and join us. Oh, he's here. Manoj, because I want to talk about the prize because we have some time. I would say take a seat, but no one seems to want to sit today. So let's just shuffle up.
No, we're all standing.
Come on in.
I'm following Jeffrey. No,
we can sit.
sitting.
Let's sit.
What do you know?
Let's sit. Grab a seat. Because I want to talk about the literature prize.
How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you.
Hey, buddy.
And here it is. We're launching this for the very first time. And Manoj, if I say IGF and literature, two words I wouldn't have put in the same sentence. We talk about a lot at IGF. Explain the connection for me.
Well, at IGF, we're storytellers. We tell the story of contemporary India. We tell it from the lens of business, from politics, science, technology, all the things that we've been discussing before this. But without culture, commerce is a little dry. And so about 4 years ago, we launched our Culture and Creativity Forum as part of the IGF. And so bringing literature into the mix of the work that we do at IGF just made so much sense. And you touched on a very, very interesting and important point, and that's about the disconnect between what the West thinks that Indians want to read, or what the West thinks of India, and what Indians are actually reading, and what they see of their country. And so IGF seeks to bridge that particular disconnect. And so hence the idea of bringing these legends together and announcing this prize.
Jeffrey, what difference will this prize make?
What did he say?
What difference will this prize make?
What difference does what make?
The prize, the award.
The Archer Ramesh Award.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Some of you will get to 84, so feel sympathetic. Awards are very important because they give recognition. And they allow someone who has slaved night and day to achieve something to realize they're not on their own, stuck in a box. Writing is very lonely. You are totally on your own. So when the world acknowledges you, an award is an acknowledgement of your talent. It's very, very important. You might inspire someone who was beginning to give up, who realized what a challenge the next book would be, but leaves with the award and thinks, wow, somebody loves me. And that's not to be underestimated.
And Amish, this is about elevating voices, isn't it? It's about bringing them to the fore with a story about, not necessarily India, but India's connection to the world. Explain to me how we need to fast track those sorts of stories.
Absolutely. So there are two perspectives on this. One perspective which Jeffrey and I were just speaking about, we'd spoken about a few months back when we were talking about this award. The problem with many of the awards that are given till now tend to be focused more on the language, the how of writing, not the storytelling itself, the what you're writing, right? And one of the things that always drives Jeffrey and me that actually it's a storytelling that is far more critical, far more crucial. In fact, the best leaders are usually very good storytellers, right? And this is an award that aims to encourage that, the storytelling, the gift of storytelling itself. And that will be one of the key drivers of this award, which will make it very different from how other awards are. Other awards might reward those whose books are damn boring, but are written very well, right? In good language, but there's no story in there. That's one aspect. The second aspect actually is built on the question that you were saying, that the way Westerners see India, a lot of it is through the Western lens. It's one narrative, one lens, which is very different from how Indians see India, of the stories that we tell ourselves. And this is not just true of India, this is true of most countries of the global south, right? Because the way we see ourselves is very different from how the West sees us. It's just that India is a big enough market that we can put up our own narrative, and Manoj is an Indian, so he supports this. So I think these are the two critical pieces that this award will support, the art of storytelling and Indians talking about ourselves, our own stories, our own way.
I want to just come back on what Jeffrey said about the graft of writing, of storytelling. And at IGF, we've spent years nurturing entrepreneurs, nurturing people with great innovative ideas, and giving them a platform and a stage to be recognized. I don't think there's an analogy between a storyteller and a writer and an entrepreneur. The graft, the failure, picking up again, starting again, getting knocked again. How do I position this? Will it sell? Will it not sell? Will people like it? Will they not buy it? And so this is where I think this award will really bring this all together and really give encouragement to the storytellers. And the other point that Jeffrey and Amish were making is that you don't have to be the best writer, but there are so many examples of people that just are able to view the world from a perspective that others may not have thought about. They may not be able to put it well in a book sometimes in the way in which this do. But this is the nub of where we want to take this particular award.
And so to that end, how will it be judged? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so we're going to announce all the rules and details in the autumn, and the award will be announced next year, same place here in the UK at IGF, and the prize money is going to be $25,000.
Wow.
So that's
amazing.
Very good.
Coming from publishing, I can tell you that's a pretty serious prize money.
And beyond the money, very welcome as it is, what is the other support that goes with winning this prize? Because we know there is so much to, you've talked about the challenges and the hardships of writing. What else goes with this?
I think, look, you're right, it's not just the money, but this award will be visible as well. And both Jeffrey and I, because we will read the final shortlist that comes, so that the writer gets a platform to build his or her name, to build their portfolio, to build their next steps. And I think that to us is far more inspiring than just the prize money. You need more storytellers. You need more storytellers who will bring out different narratives, different points of view. And that's what we hope this award will do. Yeah. It's not just the money, it's about giving them a platform.
I will tell you all while I've captured your... When I was a young man and wrote a book called Cain and Abel, my whole life changed.
One of my favorites.
Overnight. And they kept sending me vast sums of money from all over the world. At the beginning, to pick up your point, you need the money. I'm going to say something that will shock you all. I would rather sell my next book for £1 if you would guarantee me 10 million readers who I haven't got to.
Yeah.
I no longer write for money. I write for readers. I want everyone. I met a young lady who'd never read me.
How dare she?
I recovered.
Jeffrey.
Slowly. They're the ones I want. And by the way, you're looking at a man who thinks Arcane Orion could tell a story as well as anyone on Earth.
Yeah.
That. And I'll bet towards the end of his life, what he wanted was readers. Amish's point is very fair. When you're unknown and struggling, a little extra cash will help you to do the next book. I want readers.
And that is a beautiful way to end this session and to launch the award. So I'm so delighted that we're going to be able to talk about this at IGF 2025 when we announce the winner. And as Manoj says, details will be posted and we will talk a lot about it later in the autumn. Ladies and gents, Jeffrey, Amish and Manoj, thank you.
Thank you.
It's not finished.
Turn the music off. I just want to say there, turn the music off. I just want to say the award will be announced in 2025. If I'm still alive, I'll be here.
You're certainly going to be here. Thank you very much.
Lovely to see you. Thank you. We'll step forward. So, how do we follow that? And we follow it with a very, very special guest, someone with one of the most incredible stories, and I'm delighted to say that she's going to share it with us today. We're going to talk about the story of human achievement. In just a few weeks, the Paris Olympics and the Paralympic Games will get underway, showcasing the best of the world's athletes. And, of course, para-athletes as they battle for medals. But what does it really take to be a champion? And to find out, I'm delighted to welcome India's first ever Paralympic medalist to discuss her hopes for the Olympics and Paralympics for India's athletes, and also how to smash the glass ceiling and realize your ambitions. Delighted to see you. Please welcome Dr. Deepa Malik.
Hello.
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 Lovely to see you.
Yes, thanks.
Yes. What a wonderful way for us to end this first day of IGF. And you'll forgive me, I've been doing a lot of reading of your story, and it is absolutely wonderful. And forgive me, I'm going to embarrass you slightly because I want to read some of your achievements down. Amazing achievements and recognitions. India's first ever female Paralympic medalist across any sport. One of the 10 most inspirational para-athlete women of the world by the International Paralympic Committee. Ranked as one of the top 10 Asian women leaders. 23 international medals, 68 national and state level medals in swimming, javelin, shot put, discus. The only Indian woman ever to win a medal at 3 successive Asian Games. Under your leadership team, India recorded the highest ever tally of 111 medals at the Asia Paralympic Games last year, Para Games last year. And that's before we even talk about any of your work away from sport. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if you will, take us back to the beginning and your love, falling in love with sports in the way that you did. When did you first discover your passion for athletics?
Well, then I'll have to take you back to my childhood. Because for the first time when parents discovered that there was mild weakness setting in the lower limbs, and then of course, long ordeal of hospital checkups, admissions, till the time doctor found that there was a cyst sitting in the spinal column and the surgery. And the real love for sports began in the rehabilitation, because I was a very small child, and the rehabilitation post 2 to 3 years of paralysis was not an easy journey. To make it interesting, they would invent kind of sports or games or try to get me outdoors again to play. Yep. And I think that's where a bit of a rebel also set in. Because time and again as a child I had heard and had seen my mother weep in the corner of the room when people said, you know, why are you wasting this kind of time on a girl child who's crippled? It's better to let her go because it's going to be a lifelong liability. So I always wanted to prove the naysayers wrong by doing extraordinary activities, which even led me to, you know, out of the box things like riding bikes when I was young, to join the first ever cricket team of the Rajasthan state where I was studying. And of course, my love for bikes got me married, and to take the life forward, I was happy being an army wife, because army offers you a lot of opportunities to play, to enjoy the outdoors, you travel. But when my elder daughter, barely 14 months old, met with an accident, and due to the head injury, the left of her body got paralyzed into hemiplegia. I think the whole ordeal came back. It was almost like a deja vu. Why me, why again was the question. But then I knew the answer, that a right rehabilitation, which actually means exercising, getting outdoors, getting involved in physical activity, that's where I started encouraging my daughter, Devika, to that journey, only to have my tumors come back at the age of 29, when doctors told me that I only have 7 days to celebrate walking. That is if I'll be left alive due to these repetitive tumors. A time when my husband was at the Kargil war and I was still struggling with my elder daughter's illness, I had to undergo these life-threatening spinal surgeries. This time, to scoop out the tumor, they had to go through the spinal cord, which for past 25 years has left me chest below totally paralyzed. My bladder and bowel is challenged, only half my lungs inflate. I don't have torso balance. I don't have sensation below the chest level. More than 200 stitches between the shoulder blades and repetitive tumor treatments. But I again found my source of happiness in outdoor activities and sports being one. And that became my medium to prove my abilities beyond disabilities, and not just mine, even my elder daughters. So we are the only mother-daughter duo in the entire world who have participated in para sports, won medals internationally for the country, and proved our abilities. So I guess, thank you. So even when I wanted to do certain activities which would change the mindsets, because when I was young, I heard the same reaction towards disability. 2 decades later, when I became a mother of a girl child, I heard the same reactions from the society. And another 5 years later, when I got paralyzed, 2.5 decades, nothing had changed. So it was time to change the mindsets, and I took on this journey of outdoor activities. I wanted to add not only sports, fashion, fun, picnics, travel, enjoyment, social integration, dancing, anything, biking. I wanted to reclaim my life by doing the biking all over again.
I will come on to all of those other elements too, because they're such a fundamental part of your journey. And forgive me if I say you explain some huge individual setbacks and challenges that you've faced as a matter of course. Each one of those might have floored someone. And I wonder what mindset, because we're talking about business and growth. What is the mindset that helps you power through a setback and a challenge of such a personal, intrinsic nature? How do you deal with that mentally?
I think what I have learned from my life journey is people will look at you the way you look at yourself. And if you are able to celebrate life, because life is the only festival that can be celebrated every day. You don't have to wait for dates to celebrate an occasion. And having seen death up front many a times, I take every day as a blessing. And I think the lessons that I learned through my journey and from my parents is you should always keep value addition goals. And when you say value addition goals, you mean that whatever you are doing should not only make you a better version of yourself, but should also impact people around you, your society, your country, so that every action of yours has a ripple effect and makes the life better for someone else. So that's quite a motivator, and that's something we are also trying to do through my foundation called Wheeling Happiness, which me and my elder daughter we run. And that aims towards making life better, to help people identify their sources of happiness, whatever they would like to do, whether they want to play sports, get educated, they have a hobby to pursue, to make their ecosystem more accessible for them to have better opportunities.
I want to come back to the sporting element of the decision then that your escape would be sport. When you approached the people you were going to participate with, how did you overcome those initial barriers and those initial challenges that once you decided to do that, you had set your mind to it, then unfolds a whole load of practical considerations too. And you said actually in the time between you doing that and having your daughter, nothing had changed. How, and we'll come on to Wheeling Happiness in a moment about how you are trying to change mindsets, but talk to me about the obstacles you faced first of all, and then we'll talk about how you're trying to solve some of them.
Okay, so if we start about the obstacles, definitely we talk about accessibility. So today I'm really fortunate to have Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has for the first time spoken about, under his governance, we are talking about Accessible India campaign, We are talking about toilets, and toilets not just about, for women, but also persons with disability. These are very basic requirements for a person. But when I set off, I had major hurdles. First, of course, I was already a mother of two, and a very unconventional age at which I started playing. The first time I went out to play, I was 36 as a swimmer, and when I shifted gears from swimming to athletics, I was 40 for the first time when I held the javelin. And even when I was wanting to play, I was definitely, for example, I had to give up swimming, not because I was not a good swimmer, but because I could not get heated swimming pools to be able to exercise round the year. So and also end-to-end accessibility, transportation, and a person like me, when I need to train, I need a customized training program where I need a doctor, I need a physio, I need a nurse for catheterization, I need transportation with end-to-end accessibility, I need an accessible infrastructure, and more than that, I need coaches who can understand my disability and my limitations of the body and enhance the body parts which are, in a workable condition and can be improved. But to begin with, we needed inclusive policies, and we needed a government which was keeping inclusion as its priority. And it wasn't spoken of. The policies were not in place. The corporate social responsibility did not have disability or disability sports as priority. So there were a lot of things. So there were financial challenges, there were infrastructural challenges, there were mindset challenges, there were policy challenges. And it kind of adds on when you're a woman and you're a woman of a certain age, because everybody gets infected by the stereotype, and that needed to change.
And so you faced all of those challenges, I assume. They were firsts in so many ways. Where do you even start to go and challenge
the first is interesting. The first lady to win a medal, the first lady to be a biker, the first lady to cross river swimming against the current for 1 kilometer, first lady to pick up fight for the Motor Vehicle Act and take a vehicle and do the highest motorable roads, do Himalayan car rallies and desert storm car rallies. It's very interesting to be first.
Yep.
But every first came with a huge bag of challenges. And a lot of convincing had to be done that a woman in chest below paralysis wants to do these crazy things.
How did you do that convincing?
Well, hundreds of emails to be written, meeting the bureaucrats, meeting the people in power and position, trying to convince them that this would be my way of declaring abilities beyond disabilities. But in this journey, I'm happy that it wasn't just a personal achievement, but one could influence policy changes. Had an opportunity to become a member of the 5-year Planning Commission as appointed by the HRD division of the Sports Ministry, and also be continuously involved in the policy changes. So that became a huge, so it was a lot of learning for me also. I was just a graduate homemaker, very busy bringing up 2 girls and then getting paralyzed, and then leave everything, leave home and come to the capital city and then go and knock at every door possible. But it happens, look at it. I'm here in an international Indian global prestigious forum speaking to Ben. Things have changed.
And faced with each of those issues, what was the thing that made you keep going? Because each one of those individual things were a challenge in themselves, weren't they? What was the thing that said, you know what, it's another setback, it's another problem, it's another challenge, it's another issue, but I'm going to keep going?
I think 3 things, Ben, majorly. I would be lying if I don't put this one on first, which is motherhood. I was a mother of 2 young girls, and they were burdened by a lot of stereotype. And especially when I had a daughter who herself was struggling with her disability. I had to be that mother, that role model for my two daughters, because I wanted them to be productive citizens of my country with happy mindsets and a positive outlook, especially when my elder one needed the treatment and she could see the mother doing the same exercises. So it was definitely the motherhood.
Yep.
I did not want my daughters to remember me ever as that sad or sorrowful or a room bound, how people used to say, oh, she does not have a bladder and bowel control. She's going to die in a room in her own urine and feces. And that's not the kind of the mother I wanted my children to look up to. So that was one. Two, the purpose behind the journey was very strong, because I did not want to be known as Deepa, who was lucky because her husband was still keeping her and married to her. I did not want people to remember me as a dependent or somebody who will be looked after for the rest of her life. And another question that came to me, if I am an educated woman coming from fairly good financial background and from an urban setup, if I am facing these stereotypes, if this is how I am being perceived by the society of people who are equally educated, then what is happening in rural India?
Yeah.
What is happening in the families which are not so lucky to have this kind of education and financial setup? So it was a call for change, and that really drove me.
And you talk about wanting to sort of rewrite that narrative to be that role model for not only your family, but for so many others too. And my goodness, you did that, particularly in Rio in 2016, quite aside from all those other achievements. Talk to me about the build-up to Rio in 2016.
When I started playing, I thought every time I'll win a medal, my voice will be stronger when I demand policies, when I talk about at par this thing. And today, I know I'm talking more about the challenges, but the audience also needs to know, the world needs to know that today India has the best inclusive sports policy where Paralympic sport and Olympic sport is kept at par. We have the highest cash rewards given by the government, the central government and respective state governments in the entire world.
Yeah, and 111 medals for Team India
Yes.
at the Asia Paralympics, Paragames last year,
Yes.
under your watch. I mean, congratulations.
Yes. Thank you so much. I mean, yes, I think Prime Minister Modi was a great motivator. He said, "Is bar 100 par," which means this time we're going to cross 100. So the cricket-loving nation, where we have cricket almost like a religion, people are in love with 100.
Yeah.
You know, when you hit a century, it's ecstatic. So we decided that even in the Olympic sports and the Paralympic sports, we're going to hit a century. And both of us did. I mean, even the Olympic medals were 107. And I'm very proud to say that the para sports, if I take you through the graph of just the last decade, in 2012, London, when we came to 2012 in London, we had only one medal. Then we go to Rio, we have 4 medals and 19 people participating, out of which, of course, mine was the first female medal. But under the leadership, and I was given the responsibility, and even during the COVID, it was a tough target. But where only 19 athletes had gone to Rio, we had 19 medals in Tokyo 2020.
Wow.
And when we had only 1 medal of a woman, we had 3 medals won by women athletes. So that's the growth. And if you take about just the Asian Paralympic growth, 2010, we had 14 medals. 2014, we had 33 medals. 2018, we had 72 medals. And In 2022, we had 111 medals and 40% increase. 40% increase in female participation and 40% medals also contributed by female para-athletes. As recent as the World Championship in para-athletics, we beat the titans of sports, and 17 medals were won by the Indian contingent at the Para-Athletics World Championship, and out of which 6 golds belong to the women. And that's what I'm more proud of, that increase of the women athletes coming on board.
And what's so remarkable, if you don't mind me saying, about everything you've told us so far is about your contribution to further for other people, to make it better for other people, to make society more inclusive, to make it more accepting, to make it more aware. I want to take you back to 2016.
Yes.
And being on that podium.
Yes.
Getting your medal in 2016. Did you allow yourself a moment to say, I did this?
For me, 2016 was it was definitely a run-up to winning that big medal, Ben. But a point came where things took a different turn for me. I think Almighty always has a set of challenges, and it inspires me to raise my own bar. I was world number 2 for the javelin throw in F53, and I had already made Asian records twice over, bettering my own distance. Sitting very confident that I will be at 2016 Rio, but just 11 months short of that. The final list came out for the events. It was not javelin, it was shot put in my disability category. And the whole skill set changed. Yeah. I had to change my coach, my training. That is a 600-gram equipment. This turned out to be a heavy iron ball. My diet changed. And everybody was betting on me that this woman is not going to make it. When I qualified at the Doha World Championship, my throw distance was just 3.67 meters. And I was about 9th in the world ranking. But and we ended up getting only 1 female quota as given to us for the NPC India for a woman in athletics. On the final day of selection, I threw a distance of 4.48, which was equivalent to then world ranking 1 in the qualification standard list. I thought tomorrow I'm going to be in the news that, wow, a woman makes it and she's going to be winning. She's achieved this quota allocation and everything, but the newspapers read that I was taken to the High Court by a fellow athlete who refused to believe that I could have increased this kind of a distance. So the Rio Paralympics actually became for me a fight, not just for the medal, but for my integrity, my honesty, my hard work. And having gone through that High Court case for 11 days, just before the participation, and then reaching the Rio Paralympics, there was a lot to prove. Yeah. It was not just a medal to be won. Yeah. I had to cross the 4.48 mark. And when my second throw happened, it was 4.49. So that was sorted. I had safely secured that. And post that, the 6th throw got me 4.61, and I got that medal. So, yes. And it still is a case study that how a woman at 46 could increase her throw by a meter in 11 months. Yep. And a lot of people ask me that, and I think after that, the para-athletes in my country believed that sports science is a very integral part of any sports training. Yep. And now we have a beautiful target Olympic podium scheme in our country.
And I want to ask you exactly
Yes.
that. Hopes for Paris. What are the ambitions? What are the hopes for Paris?
Ambitions of Paris are huge because we definitely want to increase the medal tally. You'll be very happy to learn, Ben, that this is the first time India has qualified in blind judo, para-canoeing, para-cycling. These are the new events that I've added. Yeah. This is the first time we're going to be participating in 12 para sports where we have qualified. So it was 9 last time, and prior to that it was 5. So you see how steeply the graph is going up.
And the momentum.
Momentum is going up, and women participation has gone up. And hopefully, the way I look at it, the way I can study the growth of the para athletes and their preparations, we should target about 25 to 30 medals. Though I'm a little superstitious about giving numbers, but I definitely see them getting there, and I wish them all the very best. But what I'm more proud of is now everybody is looking at us as a strong potential where our talent is being recognized, and everybody looks at us like how I have been hearing, and I'm so proud to be an Indian today here when everybody's calling India a superpower, you know, so many trillion economy, and we are growing in every field. Holistically, we are also growing very fast as a sporting nation. And for example, we recently hosted the World Parachuting World Cup, and the reviews that we have received and the thank you letters said that this was one of the best ever. That means we are ready to host such huge competitions. We are bidding for the World Para Athletics in 2025. So even in the para sports, world level events have started happening.
Could India host the Olympics and the Paras? And what would be a realistic time frame?
Definitely. I mean, India is heading to be the superpower in every field. We are landing on the moon, the first ones on the other side of the moon. So our infrastructure is going. The whole day we have heard such wonderful, you know, how India is growing as a global superpower, financially, infrastructurally, business-wise, technology-wise. And the growth of a nation has to be measured holistically, and sports is one such marker. Recently, I was fortunate to be present in person when the IOC meeting happened at Mumbai in the Neeta Mukesh Ambani Cultural Center. And our Honorable Prime Minister himself was present. And I am really looking forward. And with Olympics being bid, Paralympics follows, because that is an integral part. And this is going to be a huge opportunity for my country to have that complete inclusive infrastructure coming up alongside. It's not going to only impact the growth of parasports, but also create that awareness and inclusion, which is absolutely essential for any country to be called a developed country.
And what a wonderful way for us to leave it this evening. It's been an absolute honor to talk to you. Thank you so much for being with us. Dr. Dibba Malak.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And very briefly, that brings us to the end of the sessions today. A reminder, of course, events all week for India Global Forum. Birdcage Walk tomorrow. We'll be at the London Stock Exchange on Wednesday at the Taj, and then Thursday and Friday, of course, at Windsor, including, of course, the annual awards too. There is still time to register, so if you want to come to those, make sure you do. I will be your guide through some of those sessions across the week, and I'm really looking forward to some of the discussions that we will have. But for now, from me, from Nisha, from all of the IGF team, have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
IGF is the one moment in my annual calendar.
So the importance of IGF, it's actually